Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow underway on the Friday edition. Glad you're with us across the OutKick network, which includes this YouTube channel right now. You may be watching. If not, if you're watching on a different platform, we say thank you for that, including if you're listening on this great radio partner. You can search out OutKick on YouTube. We hope you'll subscribe while you're there. Join us in the chat. Chad's not there today. The day off for Chad today. He'll be back with us on Monday, and what is going to be a jam-packed show. Today and Monday. We've got one big thing on every NFL game coming up in 20 minutes. Michael Fabiano joins us later this hour. He will get us set, all the rosters set for fantasy football. Danny Canel back with us coming up in hour number 2. Plus, Kelly in Vegas joins us for a few segments. We'll dive into the latest lines, the smart plays, and my dumb ones. That's coming up in hour number 2. Plus, Merill Hodge. We'll discuss factor backs and who he would have right now as the MVP of the NFL halfway through the season. Got plenty to jump into, but the storyline is with Jim Harbaugh, Michigan, and what's going to happen now that they've boarded a flight to State College and we're still awaiting any disciplinary action from Tony Petitti and the Big Ten. So Harbaugh's on the flight, boarded and traveled about an hour ago or so, and he's on the team bus, on the drive to Detroit, then a flight to Happy Valley for Saturday's game against Penn State. And while we all waited on word of the Big Ten Commissioner, Tony Petitti, and a decision on a penalty for the sign-stealing saga at Michigan and what the suspension would be, the reports varied. From a hefty fine to a possible 3-game suspension. Michigan was kept waiting on the Big Ten to notify them of whatever penalty that they would attempt, really, to hand down, even though Harbaugh's attorney, Tom Mars, said that Harbaugh would be on the travel itinerary one way or the other, the quote earlier today. And add today to the list of crazy and weird details of the last 19 days. It's a bizarre detail today. It's not letting anyone know if Harbaugh would be coaching tomorrow against Penn State. And timing matters due to the travel plans. If you're going to suspend Jim Harbaugh, you need to do it before today and well before travel plans and itineraries are in motion as they head to the airport. Petitti backed off, if he did back off of what was expected, which was a multi-game suspension. He has cratered to the threat of court filings, just as the NCAA would do, quite frankly. And that's about the only thing comparable to the way the Big Ten has handled this and their approach to the way the NCAA has. Many people are reacting to the reports of a likely suspension, which, again, may be up to 3 games, according to what Heather Dinich from ESPN has heard. And they're saying suspending Harbaugh it sets an awful precedent. Everyone's doing it, quote unquote. And if that's true, that means you're not going to enforce policies and rules. If you're not going to do that, then what's the point of having the rule or the policy in the first place? There's no question about the obvious NCAA rules violation here. And the Big Ten made the impression that if they're the jury, they're not going to deliberate for very long. This isn't the usual formula for how the NCAA conducts their investigations compared to the Big Ten. Because if they suspend Harbaugh, it's putting their best team at risk of not making the college football playoff. This isn't using the worst teams in the conference right now, like Indiana or Purdue, and setting an example of, hey, this could happen to you. To all you good programs, it could happen to you. This is sending a message that it will happen to you, or at least that's the perception. Because if Petitti comes in and suspends Jim Harbaugh as Michigan finishes what could be an unbeaten regular season, then he's willing to use the gavel on anyone. And by potentially delivering a multi-game suspension, he's now put himself in a position where he has to be held to a similar standard for future issues that will arise inevitably. And the leadership at other member schools who were calling for this, coaches and others, they should be held to the same standard that they've set by demanding Michigan receive swift punishment instead of just letting the NCAA handle everything. I mean, it's a gutsy decision because they could have just kept quiet. because even though Michigan hasn't been fazed by this on the field, I mean, it is the mega powers of college football typically never sacrifice millions in the college football playoff revenue and the opportunity to win a national title at any cost. And that's really the big storyline that's developed out of the Connor Stalions offsite sign-stealing saga and the escapade. The Big Ten commissioner, Tony Petitti, he's opening the door for instant punishment, at least in regards to the sportsmanship policy, and a failure to monitor, which is pretty much all it takes to reach this level of a fast decision. And Petitti and the Big Ten have decided to do the opposite of what is going to be a lengthy and weak NCAA investigation process, but is speeding up the investigation process from the conference's standpoint the right call given the spot that it now puts their commissioner in, because the penalty is going to be based on evidence provided by 11 other Big Ten programs, at least that we know of, and other Big Ten programs leaking information to media reports, leaking info or video based on what they've received. Michigan's doing the same thing, by the way, trying to show that everybody's doing it, all in the name of this is a violation of the sportsmanship policy. And in the letter from other responses from Michigan to the Big Ten, there's not one mention of we didn't do it. All it's doing is pointing to Connor Stalions, who was some rogue analyst. And yes, they broke the rules. But it's so rare for a conference to jump in and lead the way. Normally, you just sit back and let the sloths at the NCAA work with their investigation. And as Andrew Brandt said, and will say, there will be lawyers. And it's that threat that could keep this from being a harsh penalty in the eyes of many. And so the lawyers are going to win. Jim Harbaugh is also going to win, because despite all of this, he's going to get a raise, either with Michigan or with the NFL. And the truth is, if you win enough, you can make anything make sense. And if you aren't winning, they're going to find a way to get rid of you. So no matter the penalty, Petitti will send a message, doing more than just staying silent. And while not potentially crushing Michigan, he still does more to penalize the current program right now instead of the future of the program. Or if he just decides to issue a fine, the message will be that all that's needed to lighten penalties for rules violations is simply threaten a potential and possible lawsuit or guarantee that one's going to happen. So, Davey, a story that started with spreadsheets, travel itineraries, the Central Michigan sideline, and
still not an update on that investigation.
No,
I was checking before the show.
They're on the NCAA path there. It included used vacuum cleaners on Stalions' front porch. There's still nothing to directly implicate Harbaugh. At least that's been out for everyone to, comb through. Only that it's just under his leadership, which failed to monitor here. And while we all agree that there's no way Harbaugh I wasn't aware of what was going on, Petitti could attempt to keep him off the Michigan sideline based on that. I'm pretty sure no other commissioner would respond in this same way. But it is time to respond if you're the Big Ten. At least respond to the reports that they are about to respond, instead of, is he going to go to Happy Valley? Is he not? Because what we do know is Harbaugh is the head coach on a flight to Happy Valley right now for a kickoff with college football playoff implications and big-time results. And views vary, but not, we were talking earlier before the show, not with Michigan men. They have no problem with what's taken place because everybody's doing it. And Desmond Howard is the latest to chime in saying that, it's no big deal. He said, without saying this directly, that no one should, take responsibility for their own actions,
Essentially,
roughly?
Yes, that's what he's getting at. And this is this is a broader thing, and I want people to take a step back and look at this. I know we all see everything that is going on at Michigan. We look at it from the perspective of, hey, that's not my team. I understand why I'm going to sit back and throw all this judgment. But at the end of the day, if you were to put your other perspective, or if you were looking at it from a Michigan perspective, or if this was your team in this situation, you would be doing whatever you wanted to defend them. You would be able to deflect, have reasoning as to why this shouldn't apply to us in this situation. And it's more than just a sports story. It's just a cultural problem at large for our society in general. Now, Desmond Howard, what he ended up saying was, this would never happen in the SEC. Are you telling me they would do this to Nick Saban in Alabama? Well, probably not, but that doesn't mean you still should not do the right thing in the situation. And I understand they're wanting to say, well, we need to let due process play its way out. The bigger issue here is we have everything on tape, unless there's more that's even worse than what we know. And what we know is, we're considering this the biggest cheating scandal in the history of college football. And when you look at it from that perspective, we'll never know at the end of the day how much of an impact the sign stealing led to their wins versus, all right, well, maybe it was one game helped them here, and then they were able to use that run to recruit some better players and continue to, they don't play difficult schedules at Michigan. But if you're Desmond Howard, you got to just take the step back and say, I understand why everyone's coming at us, and I get it. You're going to sit out there, you're going to say, hey, I want the Michigan people to love me by saying this is how I feel. But if you're Tony Petitti, right now, you have the chance to overtake Greg Sankey as the most powerful man in college football. But you have to make the right decision. And right now, we have no idea what he's planning on doing because they've at least kept that under wraps for the most part. I mean, he's standing on that precipice to where he could be the guy. They're getting 4 more schools, big-time programs from the West Coast coming in next year. They're going to be at 20 teams. And I get it. You could hurt your own program or your own conference by kicking Michigan out of an opportunity to play for a national championship by going to the college football playoff, or saying they can't compete in the Big Ten. I don't think we'll get to that point just simply because they don't want to punish the current players. But a message does need to be delivered right now, and we're not getting much of anything.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, how punitive of a message? Because you have 2 governing bodies who are likely to be very different in how they handle discipline here based on the rules violations.
Well,
and I mean, it also, you have to quantify, like, what you can prove and then what is likely to happen, very likely to happen, which is Tony Petitti's already mentioned this. Yeah. He doesn't want to spend Thanksgiving in a courtroom, right? The Thanksgiving week, and that's exactly what's going to happen here.
Well, I see at this point, unless they do nothing, I don't see Michigan just accepting that and saying, yep, we're going to go with that. So your options are, don't punish them at all, or punish them and end up in a courtroom.
Well, or just fine them, and then it's business as usual.
I still think they would push back on that.
I don't think so. I think they would just take the fine and move on. But see, it's also a precedent that he's setting, because if more info comes out on Ohio, like Ryan Day's saying, like, oh, we cleared this through compliance. It's like, yeah, your compliance office, right? It's all about what you can point back to and what everyone's going to get their hands on and comb through to the point where you're actually going to take it to the commissioner, which is what happened here, and demand that the penalties are handed down.
Well, the bigger problem here, too, is if this was a decade ago, I think we would actually see the NCAA step up and something would have happened by this point. The problem is we don't have anybody that's a power broker in college football that's willing to step up and actually make these decisions. That's why it kind of comes back to the conversation of somebody needs to take over the NCAA when it comes to regarding the sport, or regulating and putting forth measures that everyone will operate under. I get it. Like, I'm not going to say you shouldn't cheat. I won't say that. I know in this world of college athletics, everyone's doing it. But the thing for me is, if you get caught because you're sloppy and you don't take the necessary precautions to be smart about what you're doing, then you should be punished.
Yeah,
that's simple.
There's no doubt the links that Connor Stallions was going to, and there's no doubt that it's more than just Connor Stallions, and that's what I don't think has been hammered home enough here. You're not just randomly picking out people to go, film the sideline and then send it back to you and then let him decipher it if you don't trust those people, right?
Yeah.
And it's 3 years that he's been there, not just this season. And as far as scandals go, I mean, I don't consider this among the biggest. Because I do believe, like, if we're going to call it that and reference that, it would end up being a scandal involving so many other programs. They're just not dumb enough to have this guy in Central Michigan, have their guy in Central Michigan gear, or in the Michigan gear while they're on the road, or keeping so much detail on the travel itinerary of where he's going and where he could possibly go based on the tickets purchased.
I guess to clarify a little bit more on my point, the reasoning I put it in that category as the biggest cheating scandal is because while it's not been proven, all evidence in what I have seen points to, they were giving the signs to teams that they wanted to knock out other potential playoff competitors to where they would get a rung up on the ladder. And whenever you're doing that, you're impacting not just your team, but conferences, programs throughout the country. And that's what we've seen. And so, again, it kind of comes back to, I still think there's more that we don't even know at this point that we're hoping to find out. And that's going to probably take longer in
so
the
if we're
going to
buy that they were giving signs to other programs, I have to assume that the other story's true too, with Purdue and Rutgers and Ohio State. If we're going to throw it back on Michigan for that, you have to look at the other programs. And now we're up to 4 programs within 19 days of doing it. Everyone's doing the sharing. So many coaches are connected across the country. The question is, how many coaches can be connected to the guy that's on the road doing exactly what Connor Stallions is doing? And even as blatant and obvious as it is with him, they still can't map it back to Harbaugh except to say it's just a failure to monitor with one of his analysts that is on the sideline in sunglasses. Coming up, one big thing on every NFL game.
Quote, a good state champion caliber high school boys team would smoke the best team in the WNBA. Then this weekend, after the video was posted and the critics, of course, came for him, he doubled down on what he said, posting this on X. Quote, it's sexist to say women's basketball players aren't as good as men's. That was a question, obviously. It's my opinion, and I'm putting $1 million behind it. If I'm wrong, the WNBA team can take my money and make more from one game than they do for the entire season. Okay, so let's get into this because obviously there's a lot of people out there who are just assuming that Clay is being sexist, that he is trying to really punk the WNBA because, let's be honest, the ratings for the WNBA aren't great, which is exactly why Clay made the joke at the end of that. If you were to give them $1 million for losing the bet, that would be more than the WNBA would make regularly for one game under normal circumstances. But the fact remains that men and women biologically super different, and that's what he's talking about. We even look at a boys' high school basketball team and the makeup of their players, what they're able to do, their size, their skills, and look at the WNBA players who are oftentimes much older. They're professional basketball players, but still, the level of competition would not at all be on the same playing field. So, Chris, let's get into that. What is your take on this? The fact that people would say that, Clay, you're being sexist, when reality remains men and women, super different, even at very different ages, different places in their careers, there would be no matchup whatsoever.
I don't even think it's questionable. I love that Clay took it to him. I think a lot of times silence speaks louder than words. The Las Vegas Aces haven't said anything in response yet. Mm-hmm. So, look, you're right. I dug into the rosters, the Las Vegas Aces, and then, look, I've spent some time training at IMG Academy. I work with athletes at a school called Lou High, which is one of the top programs in the country. And we have guards 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". We're on the Aces. The tallest players are 6'3" and 6'4", and those are their bigs. So they don't even have anybody to really account for the bigs on the male teams. And I don't know that it's how in any way is this a sexist thing to say. Yeah.
Well, I have a woman, I think, who will be able to help answer this question. She is super smart. She's super intelligent. I am a big fan of her. Everybody, you're also a big fan of her. We all are. It just has to be said. So let's go ahead and bring in the woman of the hour, Riley Gaines. Hello, Riley. I'm happy to see you again. I feel like I get to spend so much time with you these days.
I know, right? Very good to see you, and I will say it is rainy here as well, which just sucks.
Okay, so are you, I know the last time we talked, you were like bouncing all over the place. Where are you right now?
I'm actually in Nashville, but headed to New York today. So I'll be on deck.
Okay, well, welcome. You get to go from rain to rain.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, Riley, let's get into the topic that we were just discussing. Obviously, Clay being a little bit sarcastic in the way that he framed the question, but he's saying he's willing to make a bet that the WNBA champions, still being the champions, professional basketball players, would not be able to hold a candle to any high school boys basketball team in the country. Is he being sexist, or is he just speaking facts that men and women are very different in terms of what they are capable of athletically?
Boom. Right there. It's not sexist to say men and women are different. It, like you said, it's reality, it's truth, it's common sense, it's logic, it's reasoning. We all know it.
Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. Glad you're with us today. The Friday edition is here. Coming up, Michael Fabiano joins us in 20 minutes. The latest on how to set your fantasy football rosters. We'll have the Fabs 5, the 5 starters, 5 to sit this week. Plus, questions and comments from all viewers on the YouTube chat. We've got that straight ahead. Plus, Danny Canel will join us in about 40 minutes from now, and Kelly in Vegas, plus Merill Hodge today. 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine getting it done. Davey, it's packed, to say the least. You and Matt today are on Harbaugh watch. Is that what we call it?
We got to think of something better than that.
Yeah.
I'll try to
Connor Stallions would have a better
something.
name.
Come back to me next segment.
Okay,
I'll have
that's
something
good.
by then.
Well, but, yeah, I mean, everyone was expecting that we'd hear something today. But I guess not, considering Harbaugh's on his way.
Have we put a gate on this one yet? You know, like Spygate. Like,
no, I don't. No one's
Watergate.
really comparing it. No one's really comparing
it's really
it to
dumb that we do
Spygate.
that, because Watergate, it wasn't like the place was just called Water. Like, Watergate was the actual name of the place, but now
Yeah.
we've just taken Gate and put it on everything else.
Well, so I was talking with a buddy of mine earlier. Imagine if Petiti was like, yeah, I'm going to wait until about an hour before kickoff to announce everything. They want to try to have an injunction. They're about to get one from us. I don't think that's how it goes down either. But the announcement will happen sooner rather than later.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Hopefully we get better games across the NFL than what we had last night to kick off Week 10 between the Bears and Panthers.
Ugh.
It is time for one big thing on every NFL game. Weekly notes. 10 rookie quarterbacks are going to start in Week 10. That's a new NFL record, and that makes for the obvious assumption for the Week 10 slate. It's not a ton of great games this week. Yes, rookies are factoring in to this below-average matchup week, but it's also because 4 teams are on their bye, including the Chiefs, Dolphins, Eagles, as well as the Rams. We've got some really good teams that aren't on the field for what is going to be some bad matchups as we roll through them. The Colts are 4-5. The Patriots are 2-7. New England and Indianapolis in Germany. Bill Belichick has never lost in Europe. He's 3-0. And although Gardner Minshew has started 41 games in his career, he has never faced Bill Belichick. And there's no one better, really, than Belichick at confusing opposing quarterbacks whenever he's facing them for the first time. If you buy into, the rumor mill and the gossip in Foxborough, in Boston, Bill Belichick needs to win this game. I just don't buy into it. Mainly because if you're going to fire Bill Belichick, I would just try to trade him in the offseason. To me, that makes sense.
I just saw that Shane Steichen and the Colts are the only team to score 20 points or more in every game this season. Do you think the Patriots are going to be able to get over that hump?
I think so, yeah. I think the Patriots win this game. Mainly because Gardner Minshew's facing Bill Belichick for the first time. But I understand where you're going with that. The Patriots also have to score. The Browns and Ravens can put up points, but they also play great defense. Cleveland leads the NFL in total defense, and just behind them, Baltimore at number 2. The over-under for Sunday, no matter where it is right now, I would take the under heading into Week 10 because you've got the top defenses, and then you're also considering how great the AFC North has been. All of the teams are at least 2 games above 500, which marks the first time that's ever happened this late in the season since divisions were realigned in 2002. No 4-team division, by the way, has ever sent all 4 of its teams to the playoffs. But right now, all 4 would be in and be playing in mid-January. Baltimore beat down Cleveland 28-3 back in Week 4. And that was the Deshaun Watson game or warm-up where he decided not to play due to a shoulder injury. And he's since back, and he looks to lead the Browns to a victory over a Baltimore team that's just 6-9 in division play since the start of 2021. And a note that I didn't even realize until earlier today, Odell Beckham Jr. he's matching up against the Browns for the first time since he left. He says there's no animosity. I say that's because Baker Mayfield's in Tampa. Texans on the road in Cincinnati. 4-4 is Houston. Bengals are 5-3. Cincy is playing great, and they face a showdown in Baltimore next Thursday night. But can't overlook Houston, even though the Texans, they listed 23 players on their injury report this week. But the Bengals are banged up. T. Higgins has been ruled out. Jamar Chase seems like a game-time decision. No word as of today on his status. They're going to have him go through warm-ups on Sunday. Rookie quarterbacks with at least 2,500 passing yards in their first 9 career starts. Justin Herbert, Andrew Luck, Cam Newton. C.J. Stroud can join this list and become the 4th on the history list here for 2,500 over 9 games played. 3rd overall pick, Will Anderson, by the way, 30 tackles, only 2 sacks. And they need to put more pressure, and more will be needed from him as they take on Joe Burrow and company. By the way, Houston, if they can pull the upset here, the only teams after the game against Cincinnati, the Jaguars and Browns are the only winning teams left on Houston's schedule currently. 49ers are back from a bye. They're 5-3. Jags coming back from a bye, 6-2. It's a game that felt like should have been flexed into primetime this week. Jaguars, hottest team in the NFL. They're winners of 5 straight games. It's the longest winning streak of any team. But also, there's a losing streak for San Francisco, 3 straight losses. But we're going to see the debut of Chase Young, a defensive end. And Trevor Lawrence needs a great game from his offensive line if the Jags want to beat San Francisco for the first time in 18 years. They haven't beat San Francisco, Davey, in 18 years. Jacksonville. Wow. They've had some bad teams, but that's a while.
Jags have won and covered in 5 straight games. I know that much.
Brock Purdy, can he just protect the football? He should be able to against the Jaguars secondary, but he's committed 6 turnovers the last 3 games, and 5 of the 6 turnovers are interceptions. And if you compare that to his first 10 regular season starts, he didn't throw an interception, and they were 10-0. But since then, they've lost the past 3. The 49ers are 0-37 under Kyle Shanahan when trailing by 8 points or more in late in the game. I never would have expected that, given the offensive firepower that they have.
I guess it goes to show not having a solid quarterback that you can rely on to bring you back.
Yep. Saints and Vikings in Minnesota. Vikings are closing in on the Lions. Minnesota now sitting at 5-4, riding a 4-game winning streak. Minnesota currently holds the NFC's 3rd wildcard spot, and they have a favorable schedule leading up to 2 games in the final 3 weeks. They'll face Detroit in those 2 games of the final 3. That could just decide the division race. And to make it to the playoffs, the Vikings, they've got to improve in their rushing offense. They're 29th in the NFL right now. And, I mean, Dobbs was leading the way last week, 66 yards in a scramble against the Falcons. Derek Carr needs to step it up too. Winnable game, I say, for both teams here. Packers and Steelers in Pittsburgh. 4 of Pittsburgh's 5 victories this season have come in games where they've trailed heading into the 4th quarter. The win over Los Angeles for Green Bay. Jordan Love's first game without an interception since week 2. And now he faces a defense that is third in the NFL in takeaways. Steelers have 16. I'm taking Pittsburgh.
I'm with you, taking Pittsburgh and the under. Jordan Love has not been reliable, and I would imagine that Steelers defense is going to be able to get at him early and often.
Bucks are hosting the Titans on Sunday. Both teams desperate for a win. At least for Tampa's chances, the NFC South is mediocre. A really bad team's going to win that division. Jacksonville's going to win the AFC South. The Bucks have lost 4 in a row, which is their longest skid since 2019. The Titans have dropped 3 of their last 4, and that was following their 2-2 start, and they have not won a game on the road this season. And the Titans' run defense is certainly vulnerable. And Rachaad White, I think you have on your team, Davey.
I do, yep. I mean, the thing I'm looking forward to here is we saw C.J. Stroud just absolutely light up that Bucs defense last week. Is Will Levis in a situation where he'll be able to really set the world on fire?
We also saw Baker Mayfield light up the Houston defense, too. This could be a high-scoring game. I may hit on that later in the show. Falcons and Cardinals kick off your late afternoon slate. Kyler Murray, one of his biggest strengths during his first 4 seasons was his ability on the run, scrambling. But how much would the Cardinals want him to be exposed to big hits coming off such the injury like an ACL? Meanwhile, the Falcons have 2 of the NFL's top 10 leaders in receiving yards among tight ends. Hello, Arthur Smith, Jonnu Smith, and Kyle Pitts. No other team has 2 tight ends among the top 20, and the Falcons have 2 in the top 10. Cardinals on a 6-game losing streak, lost to the Browns 27-0. They had a 1-13 record in games where Kyler Murray missed. 1-13. I like Arizona here.
I've activated Kyler Murray off IR, so
are you
no
starting?
one cares about fantasy. But yeah, the thing for me in this game, though, is the Falcons have yet to lead at halftime this season.
Oh, they've always trailed or tied?
Trailed or tied, yep.
That's not good for Arthur Smith either. Lions and Chargers also this week. Chargers offense, they're underachievers. And that's really evident since Mike Williams was lost in week 3. Defensively, every position group has shredded the Chargers. And Detroit can do that here. Sam Laporta, St. Brown, all of Detroit's running backs. Solid matchups for week 10 for the Lions. The Giants on the road against the Cowboys. Cowboys 5-3. G-men are rolling with Tommy DeVito at quarterback against a red-hot Dak Prescott. And the defense and the special teams for Dallas that beat them up 40-0 in week 1 with Daniel Jones. Commanders hit the road against the Seattle Seahawks. Commanders are 4-5. Seattle's 5-3. Is this an upset alert? Geno Smith is on a 4-game skid here where he's thrown 6 interceptions, and he's also been sacked 11 times. And Seattle has scored 20 points or less in 3 of those 4 games. Sam Howell is a big pick to have a great week in the passing department. And that's because, well, they're facing Seattle's secondary. It's not good. And Sunday Night Football, Jets, Raiders. Why haven't the Jets tried to play Trevor Siemian at quarterback? Robert Saleh would not answer that question when he joined the Michael Kay show, where he literally said he had to plead the 5th. The Jets, the only NFL team in the Super Bowl era to have their defense collect 5 or more sacks, hold an opponent to under 200 total yards, and not allow any plays for 25 yards or more and still lose the game by 20 or more points.
I look at this one. I mean, I saw the Chargers the Chargers had 8 sacks on the Jets last week. 8.
That helps pad the stats. It's not bad. Raiders, by the way, they've allowed the most rushing yards to running backs. This is a Jets running game, though, that has not had success since week 5, really. If they're going to run the ball, this is the week to do it in Sin City. Finally, Monday Night Football, Broncos at Bills. Many people are worried about Buffalo. Count me as one of those. This is a must-win for Sean McDermott's team, and it is a time to shine game for Josh Allen and a Bills offense that averages 26 points per game. But Buffalo, they need this one. And they then host the Jets next week. And then it's a crucial 6-day stretch here that starts Monday night, because right after these two games, they have trips to Philadelphia and Kansas City on the road. Josh Allen, he leads all quarterbacks with 24 total touchdowns this year. 18 of those are passing. And he has at least one touchdown pass and one rushing touchdown in 6 of his past 7 games. But this is a Denver defense, Davey, that's played 3 strong games in a row, stopping the opposition. And by the way, 2 of those were against Kansas City.
I mean, they're starting to turn things around. I know Sean Payton didn't exactly come into the best situation, and he made the comments for the offseason about Nathaniel Hackett make it look like, oh, this is so easy, and obviously they were struggling early. But they've actually looked competent on both sides of the ball the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, they're protecting the football. Russell Wilson's, he's thrown 16 touchdown passes to just 4 picks. The problem is he has also thrown for less than 200 yards in each of the last 4 games. Take the under here, too. Whatever it is. Take the under every week, right?
I'll go ahead and throw this one out there. So after last night, the under in primetime games this year, 23-7. It's a 76.7 win percentage. The under's where it's at.
Get down with the under, not just in week 1 this year. Quarterback play is awful. And it was awful, by the way, before we're about to see 10 rookie quarterbacks start. Last night's offensive, the lineup, the starting lineup, maybe the worst collection of 2 teams with offensive, quote-unquote, skill position players that we've ever seen. It was a disaster. Hopefully you didn't start them in your fantasy league. Michael Fabiano tells you who to start. That's next on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky moonshine and whiskey. Authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky moonshine and whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in the land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. The bold taste of the Southern Legend.
Hot Mic with Honey Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. During the break, Newsbee reported that Michigan coach Jim Harbaugh will be prohibited from being on the sideline until the conclusion of the regular season as the investigation from the NCAA on the sign stealing continues. This coming from the Big Ten. He will be allowed to coach during the week. This is the similar setup, and I'm going to get to a detail in a word in just a moment, the similar setup of what was self-imposed by Michigan on the 3-game suspension to begin the season, where he was at practice, he coached, it just wasn't at the game. Davey, this leads me to believe, based on the way this reads, they're going to prohibit Jim Harbaugh from being on the sideline for the rest of the regular season. Can he be in the booth?
It's a good question.
He can coach during the week. Can he be in the booth?
We don't have that. I think
he's on his way to Happy Valley right now.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't expect him to turn around. Still waiting for more on this, but as of right now, yeah, just Pete Thamel's the one putting this out. So hopefully the Big Ten will just release that statement from their own Twitter account soon, and we'll know exactly what the rules and limitations are to this suspension.
Yes, more details coming up. But again, it's. They're going to continue the investigation, but it's just through the regular season that he's not allowed on the sideline. I'm just reading just the straight tweet here from Pete Thamel real quick. This will open. Big Ten is expected to discipline Michigan coach Jim Harbaugh for the in-person scouting and ongoing sign-stealing investigation. And this all comes down as the plane is currently in the air. Craziness. There's consequences, but, I mean, again, I want to know if he's going to be at the game or not. And honestly, it may not even matter if he's going to be a part of the game plan, because it doesn't change really the game day necessity of play calling on either side of the football. Let's say hello to Michael Fabiano, who joins us, Sports Illustrated's fantasy football expert, our fantasy football expert, all of us. Tells us who to start, who to sit. Michael, good to see you, man. Hope things are well.
All is good, my man. Didn't really have any assets going last night in that awful football game.
Same. I right before you came on, I said that may be the worst collection of skill position talent in an NFL game that I've watched.
The NFL's got a quarterback problem. The NFL's got an injury problem, and the NFL's got an officiating problem that they're going to have to look into after this season is over.
And somehow they don't have a ratings problem.
I know. when quarterbacks get hurt, though, that is the worst thing for the NFL. And we have had more than our share of those sort of injuries so far this season.
Believe it or not, 10 rookies are starting this week. There are some good quarterbacks playing this week, even though Miami's on a bye, Kansas City's on a bye, Philadelphia's on a bye. Let's get to your starters, your starting demands. Where do we start at quarterback for you?
Let's start with Jared Goff, who's on the road. And typically when he's on the road, I don't want anything to do with him. But against the Chargers, in what should be a high-scoring game, I will absolutely start Jared Goff. Remember, he started his career with the Rams in LA. He's going to want to come back and put up a good line. So this is a nice matchup for Jared Goff. Get him into your lineup. I like Javonte Williams this week. In the week before the bye, he had 27 carries. I hope that continues because that's massive volume and a real increase from what he had done earlier in the season. And the matchup against Buffalo is not a bad one. They've allowed 13 plus fantasy points to 7 running backs this year. I'm starting Najee Harris. This is the first time I think I've had Harris as a start all year long. His last 3 games, double-digit points, over 14 in 2 of those games. He's got the Packers this week. Good matchup. So both Najee and Jaylen Warren are worth a look. At wide receiver, Brandon Ayuk, who is not putting up great numbers lately, and Debo Samuel's coming back. Don't let that deter you from starting him against Jacksonville. They've allowed the second most points to perimeter receivers this year. And then finally, DeAndre Hopkins. Did you see what the Texans did to Tampa Bay last week? Their wide receivers went off, and I would expect Nuke to have a good game this week. And if you play DFS, Will Levis is a pretty reasonably priced player if you're looking to go cheap at the quarterback position. Again, a really good matchup.
Call me crazy. I think we'll actually see some points in that game for this NFL season. Who are you sitting at quarterback?
Let's start with Deshaun Watson, who has actually been better than I think people realize. He has played 4 full games this year. In 3 of them, he has had more than 18 points. In 2, he's gone over 20. But, I mean, the Ravens have given up the fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks over the last 4 weeks. Their defense is very good. I think this is a low-scoring game. I'm sitting Deshaun Watson. I've got Saquon Barkley on this list. Now, I get it. You probably got to play him. But there is nothing going in Saquon's fortunes this week. Think about it. Their quarterback is Tommy DeVito, third-string guy. Their offensive line is Swiss cheese. They have no good receivers. Darren Waller's out. And they're playing arguably the best defense in the league on the road. So Saquon could be in a lot of trouble this week. I know you probably got to play him in DFS. Don't pay up for him. I've got James Cook as a sit, and he's going to be started in a lot of leagues because when you look at the matchup, the Broncos have actually given up the most points to running backs, but not lately. Over the last 4 weeks, they're giving up 19 points per game to that position, which is one of the lowest totals in the league. So they have fixed that running back problem. Cook is probably a risk-reward flex. Another big name on this list, Davante Adams. Check this out. In the last 5 weeks, 60 wide receivers are averaging more fantasy points than Davante Adams, including Khalil Shakir, Jake Bobo. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I get it. Like, Davante Adams is really hard to sit. But if you separate the name from the numbers, he's not even a guy that you would have in your starting lineup. They've got the Jets this week. They've allowed the fewest points to perimeter receivers, including no touchdowns. Now, in a sideways season, watch. Adams will go off this week. But I just look at the numbers and follow the process. And the process says to me, if I have wide receiver depth, it's not crazy to bench Davante Adams. Also going to fade George Pickens this week. His numbers have gone down since Deontay Johnson's return. Now, the Packers do have some injuries in the defensive backfield, including Jair Alexander, which is a good thing for Pickens. But overall, he's really no more than a risk-reward flex because the targets have not been there the last couple of weeks. And I kind of think this is going to be a lower-scoring game.
Michael Fabiano, our guest, the expert for Sports Illustrated and beyond for all things fantasy football. Viewer submission, Josh Dobbs or Kyler Murray?
You know what? I know Kyler hasn't played in a while. I'm playing Kyler. I've been waiting for him this long. I'm not going to sit him on my bench, especially when my alternative is Dobbs.
With knowing that, how optimistic should fantasy owners be about Hollywood Brown moving forward?
Really optimistic. With Kyler back, he's got a really favorable schedule, especially in the fantasy playoffs. So I would say that I might want to trade for Hollywood Brown right now before his value goes up.
Amari Cooper is coming off his best game of the season last week against the Cardinals. This week, Baltimore. Do you hesitate there to buy into what we saw last week based on the matchup with the Ravens?
I hate the matchup, but you'd have to be pretty deep at wide receiver to sit Amari Cooper, to be quite honest with you. So I'd probably still play him. I have him in a league, and I'm probably going to end up playing him, hoping for a good response to this really bad matchup. But if you've got Michael Pittman, maybe if you've got Tyler Lockett, a player like that, maybe you've got Tank Dell, who's going to be a prominent member of the Texans wide receiver core this week, maybe even more than last week because Nico Collins is hurt. You know, maybe guys like that you could start over him. But overall, it's probably going to be really tough to bench Amari Cooper.
You mentioned earlier bench Saquon Barkley if you can. Tony Pollard, though, on Sunday, as the Cowboys face the third worst run defense of the New York Giants, this is a Tony Pollard game day.
Let's hope so. As a Dallas Cowboys fan of about 40-ish years, maybe more. I'm hoping for that. He had a good game against the Giants in Week 1. He had 22 fantasy points. The schedule is going to get better for Pollard. I think what's happened to Tony is, well, first off, he misses Zeke insofar as he's not a guy who's a true featured back, Derrick Henry, Zeke type of player. And the Cowboys really don't have, that number 2 running back like they had with Zeke last year, even though he was certainly not the same back he had been in previous seasons. His long runs have been decreased, the yards per carry average. But also look at the Cowboys' opponents. Played the Niners, really good run defense. Played the Eagles, really good run defense. And then in the other games, the Cowboys killed the Giants. They killed the Jets. They killed the Rams. They've been squashing teams. They killed the Patriots. And when you're in a game script like that, you don't have to run the ball in the second half. And that might be the case this week against the Giants. But I do think that Tony Pollard will get going this week. So certainly a guy that you're going to play.
Bijan Robinson and his usage right now. Is that the biggest surprise to you of what we've seen of the rookies coming in? To me, it is, based on who the head coach is and the direction that they want that offense to go.
Yeah, I don't know why they're drafting offensive players in the first round if they're not going to use them. I mean, Kyle Pitts, same kind of thing. Like, where are the targets? And this is going on for, 3 years now. And with Bijan, I am surprised. Typically when a running back gets drafted that high, he's locked and loaded into being a top 10 fantasy running back. That's been really the trend. And maybe at the end of the season, he's a top 15 back. We'll find out. Tyler Algier is hurting him. He's hurting him near the goal line. He had that one game where he was, suddenly ill and didn't play barely at all. And that hurt his numbers. Over the last 5 weeks, he's averaging like 9 points a game, but that doesn't include that game that he barely even played.
Yeah.
Good matchup, though, this week against the Cardinals. Good schedule the rest of the way. I'd be trading for Bijan right now.
Final thing for you, among the plays, the Titans wide receiving core against Tampa, you mentioned DeAndre Hopkins. Is there another play that you would recommend of their wide receiving group at all?
No, because Treylon Burks is hurt, so he's not going to play. I'm not going to tell you to play Kyle Phillips. I'm not going to tell you to play Nick Westbrook-Ikhine unless you want to go real cheap in the DFS a classic slate. Maybe Chig Okonkwo. That's possibly I am desperate for a tight end and he's on the waiver wire type of play. Unfortunately, the Titans do not have much behind Nuke Hopkins in that passing.
No. And it comes down to me, to which defense do you trust more, which is a hard answer, given what we saw from Tampa last week, and the Titans have been bad in that area as well. And based on the defensive trust, that's the quarterback that I would start, Baker or Levis, like if you have both there. Hey, always great to have you on, man. Wonderful insight as always, and look forward to this each week. Thank you.
All right, have a very good week 10. Good luck.
Yep, same to you. He always has a good week. Michael Fabiano, the fantasy football expert, who joins us weekly. So here comes a legal battle. Michigan against the Big Ten and Tony Petitti. Barring an injunction, Harbaugh is going to be sidelined for Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State. Davey, the news coming out just minutes ago that Harbaugh is suspended for the final games of the regular season, but he's not allowed to be on the sideline with Michigan. So have you seen anything recently that clarifies if he could be in the booth? Maybe I'm just looking, trying to read between the lines too much there, but it's very specific that he won't be allowed to be on the sideline.
And I mean, we know he's in air right now. They're currently en route to Happy Valley, and he'll be in that building on Saturday or tomorrow. Like like that. It's one of those things. You can't be on the sideline. I mean, are they going to bar him from being in the locker room pregame? Is he still able to talk to his team? Because it's not like
it was very specific for Michigan earlier this year. He wasn't going to be a part of the team on game day.
Yeah. To
the point where he wasn't even going to watch the game. That's what he said for week one.
The Thamel report right now just says won't be on the sidelines for the remainder of the regular season. And that's, again, it still says expected is what the punishment's going to be from him. We've yet to hear officially from the Big Ten. The thing for me here is it's not like he's one of these coaches that if you don't have him, you don't have your offensive play caller. You're having to go to somebody else. I mean.
Well, but he's going to be able to coach during the week. That's the crucial part of it. He can prepare his team during the week if, in fact, he's going to be a sideline, quote unquote, for the final 3 games, which you're right. I mean, here comes the legal battle and a possible injunction.
Yeah, and I guess with that news coming down, like they'll be able to get it done between now and noon Eastern tomorrow.
It's like having the notary on standby.
But that's not that intense of a punishment if it's simply you just can't be on the sideline.
Yeah,
like,
no,
I would stay away from even trying to go farther into saying we're going to fight this.
Well, there's got to be more to it, but as far as the discipline for Harbaugh specifically, the report is he's going to be sidelined until the conclusion of the regular season. Danny Canel weighs in on this development next.
Dabo Sweeney ripping his own fans. Dabo Sweeney at Clemson is, I don't know, they tell me that he's the guy that doesn't like the transfer portal because he's made some comments that weren't exactly supportive of it. Dabo Sweeney has done a job at Clemson that very few thought could be done. Clemson is a town about this big. Well, I better do this, not that, because that's like a white power sign idiots say. But it's about that big. The state is South Carolina. The state is not Clemson. So, but Dabo Sweeney put Clemson in rarefied air. If you, a couple years ago, were going to name me the 3 best college football teams before Georgia's run here, you'd say Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson. That's kind of who it always came down to. It felt like. So Dabo Sweeney is now the victim of something that is good in one way, but it's bad in another. Incredible expectations of your fan base, meaning 10-2 ain't good enough. It just ain't. You can say whatever you want, but it just ain't. We got to be better. What? We're not in the college football playoff? What? We're not winning a national champion? What? We're 4-2? That's only winning 67% of our games? Here's what Dabo had to say. If you don't go undefeated, people say you're losers, that you're terrible. Let me tell you something. This is why football coaches for years and years and years and years fought the college football playoff. We're at a point in time, and I hate that, where people, if you don't go undefeated, you're losers. You're terrible. It's just a terrible mindset. Honestly, maybe we need to lose a few games and lighten up the bandwagon. Sometimes the bandwagon get a little full. That's the one good thing about going through a little bit of so-called adversity is that you really find out who's with you and who's not. That's all crap. Let me explain to you Dabo Sweeney's day, can I? Dabo Sweeney probably wakes up around 5:30. Dabo Sweeney smokes shit, shower, shave, shampoo, goes to the office. Probably has a meeting at 7. Dabo Sweeney then is probably in different meetings with players or recruits or maybe the administration going and maybe watching film. Whatever. Then he has practice. Then after practice, he's doing the same thing. Then in the evening, he's making phone calls. Probably goes home around 10. At no point in time in his day, his week, his month, his year, is he finding out who's with us and who's not with us. It's not like there's a list. Now, maybe you find out what media member wants to rip you, but on a daily basis, a monthly basis, you're not finding out any of this crap. It's very simple. Coaches, if you want to know who's with you, understand that when you lose, nobody's really with you. If you want to know who's really with you, win. And then everybody's really with you. It's literally that simple. As my father used to say to me, Dan, we're with you, win or tie, and we ain't so sure about the tie. So shut up with that stuff. Win some football games and don't sweat it. Seriously, do yourself a favor. Work hard, grab yourself a glass of wine, go sit in your chair and read a book instead of being on social media or worrying about who is with you and who is not with you.
Second hour is here, Friday edition. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network. Chad back with us on Monday. Coming up, Kelly in Vegas will join us. We'll get the best plays, and I'll describe my worst. Don't take my advice. Take Kelly's. She's with us in 20 minutes. News coming down that Jim Harbaugh suspended today by the Big Ten and Commissioner Tony Petitti. And the Big Ten has clarified the report from Pete Thamel that said that he would not be on the sideline for Michigan over the final 3 games of the regular season. That means he's not with the team for the regular season games to close out against Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State. And just reading straight from the release from the Big Ten, as a penalty imposed on the institution, the university football team must compete without its head football coach for the games remaining in the 2023 regular season, effective immediately. This disciplinary action shall not preclude the university or its football team from having its head football coach attend practices or other football team activities other than the game activities to which it applies. For clarity, the head football coach shall not be present at the game venue on the dates of the games to which this disciplinary action applies. That from the release of the Big Ten as part of the discipline for the sign-stealing saga that has been going on and the failure to monitor that they're pointing to within the sportsmanship policy. We say hello to Danny Canel, who joins us, courtesy of betonline.net. You can check out BetOnline for updated college football playoff, win totals, conference Heisman, and college football Week 11 lines right now at betonline.net. Danny, what do you make of the news and the fact that right now Jim Harbaugh's on the flight to Happy Valley with his team, and currently he's not allowed to coach tomorrow?
So, Jonathan, it's great to catch up with you.
Same.
I'll give you a little background because I was actually on the set with CBS Sports HQ, and we were previewing this game and talking all about this. And we come off the set, and the producer's like, wait, and we talked about it for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And he's like, wait, we think this news is coming down, so we want to go back, get your instant reaction. And I said, what's the news? And he said, the Big Ten is levying this punishment. And I said, I got to go. I got to get on Hot Mic. I got something. I got a place I got to be. And here's what I said. I said, if Jim Harbaugh is not on the sideline, regardless of the ruling, I said, I'll give you $100.
Okay.
I still find it hard to believe. Now, what I think is because I think Michigan's going to fight this. Everything that they've indicated has been in a position of, we're going to stand behind our head coach. We're going to stand by our program. This is unprecedented. This isn't fair. We haven't had a full investigation. And it sure looks like Tony Petitti has said, the new commissioner of the Big Ten has said, we don't care. We have to uphold sportsmanship, and we have to do the integrity of the game, which I appreciate. But I still have a feeling, Jonathan, that Jim Harbaugh is going to be on the sideline. Now, I think, like you said, I even think, because this was supposed to come out at 1, it almost feels like they waited until the flight was in the air, like literally until they were on the plane, which is kind of messed up.
I agree.
Then when they land, I think you'll get a quick response from Michigan. But are you with me? Do you still feel like they're going to fight this? They're going to get the TRO, and they're going to say, because that's every indication, until I see Michigan saying, yep, we've accepted this, because there is a possibility it was negotiated, right? Maybe they were going to do something significant, but that doesn't feel like anything Jim Harbaugh would agree to. So I still think they'll be defiant, claim their innocence, say, no, he's coaching.
Yeah, I mean, if it was agreed to, I don't know if Tom Mars and others are releasing statements, doubling down on the fact that, he's going to be on the team flight one way or the other. It's a strange deal based on the timing of this. For as fast-paced as Tony Petitti was with this internal investigation by the Big Ten, and by the way, I want to get to the precedent of what he's said here in a moment. For as fast-paced as it was, they took their time 24 hours before they're set to play Penn State. If you want to discuss competitive advantage, to me, this is a competitive advantage for Penn State.
Yeah, I hate it. I've always hated this for the players, who I think are probably knew the least in all of this. Now, they probably benefited from it. They definitely benefited if they did know the signals, they had an advantage. But I don't think any players knew what was going on. They're kind of, they have enough going on. They're trying to keep their starting jobs. They're trying to play well in front of 80,000 fans. I feel the worst for them because this morning we had heard whispers of this, and I was like, they're not going to do this before the game. Why don't you just wait till Sunday? Wait till an off day. They can regroup, get the whole week. I think this is borderline insanity that Tony Petitti would release this news now on Michigan right before the biggest game of the year. I don't think it makes much sense, and I think they're going to find a legal battle on their hands. But we'll see, because it does set a precedent. I know you want to talk about that too. That really is something that other leagues have tried to do, and the players have fought. But once again, here we see the players having little to no say whatsoever.
Yeah, and the precedent to me is not only is he willing to act fast and in regards to the policy, and it's very open-ended and vague. He can work anything in he wants to, and it's up to his discretion if he wants to punish based on the sportsmanship policy. It's not, but the difference is, Danny, to me, it's unprecedented in setting this new path because they are effectively, at least acknowledging, they could impact Michigan's chances for the college football playoff. And I don't know another commissioner that would do that to the conference or other members that would be behind it, given the fact that Michigan's the best chance for the Big Ten to have that revenue and everything else. And money, the almighty dollar, they've got a ton of it. But I mean, do you think Greg Sankey does this?
No. I mean, forever, you got to credit Mike Slive because I think it was genius. I mean, the SEC 20 years ago, they used to sling mud all over each other, right? And then what happened? A lot of programs got in trouble. The Gators got in trouble, what is it, in the 80s?
Yep.
Where they had faced probation, they faced some issues. And Mike Slive said, what are we doing? Why would we sling all this mud around? It only makes all of us look bad, and it hurts all of our chances to put our best team forward. And so there was kind of an agreement that said, let's keep it all under the table, I'll handle it, but none of us are really going to air out our public dirty laundry. And now all of a sudden you've got the complete opposite where I guess I understand the aspect of Ohio State being upset, every opponent on Michigan being upset, but really the league loses. It's a bad look for the league. You almost wish you could have kept this under the radar, swept it under the rug, handled it behind closed doors, talked to each other, said, hey, knock it out. This crossed the line. Because I do think there was some recruiting things that went on historically in the SEC, and where, Sankey would come in and say, look, that's too far. This is too much. And then you would get it resolved behind closed doors because no one wins. And you're right. It potentially could be it could be the best option they had to get in the playoffs, which is the best for the conference. I would have taken the approach. So college football, Jonathan, I think it's a religion, right? Like a lot of people treat it like a religion. Yep. And I would have let the football gods decide the fate. Said, you know what? We'll take our time on the investigation. We'll let it run its course. If it takes till after the season, we'll do it. But you know what? The football gods know. And if Michigan has been getting enough of an advantage, they'll get clipped. They'll lose tomorrow. They'll lose against Ohio State. They'll lose in the Big Ten championship. Or they'll lose in the playoff, and it'll take care of itself. Because I do think the likelihood that if Michigan had this advantage and it's gone, of them running the table and winning the national championship was pretty unlikely. It's already hard enough to do. Without that advantage, I think it would have resolved itself. Now you've opened up this can of worms with this new precedent.
I don't know, and you'll be better at this than me. I don't know how much it affects the game day operations for Michigan, given the fact that Harbaugh will be at practice throughout the week. It's really the same setup that he had for the first 3 games of the season. And, I mean, they have not been fazed one bit by any distraction behind the scenes based on what we've seen on game day. And also, I mean, who knows what we see from Penn State tomorrow? It'll be a great atmosphere. And can you imagine if Ryan Day loses to Michigan again, but not to Jim Harbaugh?
Oh, man. You talk about hot seat all of a sudden. The guy has beaten everybody except for Michigan, never lost anybody except for Michigan. But I totally think that makes a lot of sense. It's I floated this idea, wondering if maybe Michigan would accept this because they did have that 3-game window when you saw it. And I think it's a great question. I would say different teams that I played on, it would have had a different impact. Like when I was with Coach Bowden, I love Coach Bowden. Like I speak the world of him. I think he's one of the greatest coaches of all time. But if he wasn't there on game day, I don't think it would have been that different because he was a delegator. He gave the pregame speech, which I believe Harbaugh could still do. The pregame speech, like the day before, like the day of the game, which is a little bit good. Coach Bowden wasn't a fiery, go get him type guy. It was a little more business-like, here's what we're going to do. But then I played for Mike Shanahan, who was very much hands-on. He was a play caller, so it would have been huge. So from that aspect, I do think Harbaugh's more involved in the offense. I think he could have an impact on the offense. But we saw Sharon Moore, their offensive coordinator, handle it just fine, but it was against lesser competition. So I do think it impacts them way more than it did in the first 3 games. Of course, the competition is getting tougher. But, man, that dynamic of Ryan Day that you just brought up, oh, my goodness. That would be – you talk about pressure. He better win that game.
Yeah, and then if he wins, it's still – well, you haven't – Jim Harbaugh wasn't on the sideline. You know, it doesn't really right. – I mean, it helps him, but it doesn't really help the perception of who he won against. It's a crazy college football season, and, I mean, this is the definition of college football, what we're seeing. This is the CFB for sure. Going into the final 3-game stretch, what chances do you give Penn State tomorrow?
So I gave them a sliver of a chance before this, and now, I mean, especially if Harbaugh's not there, I think you'll see line movement. I think you see the line come down closer, maybe 2. I think it's 4.5 right now, 5, somewhere around there.
I'm checking it right now.
The board currently, I think it's off the board, but when it closed, I think it was 4.5. I think it'd go down to maybe 2 or 3 points because I do think it's significant. So I kind of like their chances already. And if Harbaugh's impact is on the offense, you're facing probably your biggest challenge up to definitely their biggest challenge to date on the road. I'd say I kind of give the Nittany Lions. And then how about, we were just talking about the impact on Ryan Day. How about for James Franklin?
There you go.
What's his thing? Hadn't been able to win the big game, and he's in his own backyard. At least Ryan Day, I had to go to the big house. All of a sudden, that dynamic comes into play. I already thought, so I was in Columbus for Ohio State, Penn State, and I watched that game, and it was ugly defensive battle, which is, I do think, the way this game plays out. Like, my favorite play is the under. I like under all day long.
Okay.
Both these defenses are awesome. The difference in Ohio State, Penn State was Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't think either one of these teams has a receiver anywhere close to Marvin Harrison Jr., so I don't see somebody taking over the game and putting up almost 14 points by themselves with a couple big plays. So I think it's going to be a tighter game, and if it's that one possession, again, you mentioned what impact it could have, when to go for it on 4th down, when to kick a field goal, when, those type of decisions are left up to the head coach. And if that's Jim Harbaugh, without him, does a interim coach try to make a name for himself? Does he try to do something different? Because those types of questions are where it could really impact the game.
Danny Canel with us, courtesy of BetOnline.net. Right now, it's 4.5, based on what I'm looking at currently. So it really hasn't budged based on the.
Yeah.
But I think it's basically because Hayes in the barn.
Probably, Jonathan, right, probably because my bet with my producer that I told you about, I think the odds makers are probably like, there's no way Jim Harbaugh is not going to be on the sidelines, right?
Yeah. Danny, what do you think this does for any chance of J.J. McCarthy being in the Heisman discussion?
I don't know. I'm sure you guys probably discuss it here, but, I'm a Heisman voter. Yep. There are way too many Heisman voters,
I agree. I agree.
I would give up my vote if it meant we could go to about 100, where like the NBA does. Like, let's go to 100 people who are super dialed in and watch every single game. With 900, get a lot of casual sports writers who like to put it in their bio and like to talk about it. I would give mine up if it meant it was a better award. I don't know if you saw the columnist Greg Doyle, the piece he wrote in the Indianapolis Star, that he was not going to vote for J.J. McCarthy because it was an unfair advantage, and it was a disadvantage to Bo Nix and Michael Penix and any other Jaden Daniels, any other Heisman Trophy candidate, which I understand. And he was saying, I'm not holding it against J.J. McCarthy, but I am, I'm taking that into weight, so I can't vote for him in good conscience. Ironically, he's the same guy that said Johnny Manziel he had no problem voting for because the award wasn't about integrity. That's a side note. But I do think out of 900 voters, there absolutely will be ones with a similar mindset that have the same philosophy. And all it takes 50 voters, to say, nope, he's off my ballot. And that could be the difference between winning and losing. So unfortunately, I hope it doesn't come down to that, but it absolutely is a reality that it could.
Final thing in just 30 seconds here. This really helps Alabama. This helps the SEC to get 2 teams in, honestly. Georgia with a win this week over almost, they should be number 1. I think they'll hop Ohio State. And then if Alabama makes it to the SEC championship game and beats Georgia, they're going to get in.
Yep. I think so too. I mean, you talk about the debate with a 1-loss Georgia, a 1-loss Georgia who just lost to Bama, Bama and potentially Texas 1-loss Big 12 champ who beat Alabama. That dynamic, oh my goodness. Again, I do think it usually resolves itself.
I
but
agree.
then Ohio State, I think there's also interesting because Ohio State, what if they do beat Michigan? They probably do get in. So all of a sudden, if you're just a Big Ten fan, I know they don't have those as many as they have SEC fans, but they would be rooting for Ohio State to win out because that's your best chance.
Florida State staying right there too. Hey, Danny, always great, man. Thank you as always, and great insight today as we had the breaking news with Harbaugh.
You got it, Jonathan. Great catching up with you as always. We'll see you.
Same here, man. One of the best right there. Danny Canel, courtesy of betonline.net. Big day with Tony Petitti. You have say Power 5 all you want. There's Power 2. And one of the two just looked at Michigan and said, you can talk all you want about injunctions. Here is the penalty. And based on the way the sportsmanship policy reads, if it was above the standard penalty, standard violation, which was up to 2-game suspension and a $10,000 fine, it had to go to the committee for approval. So he made his recommendation. The committee would have to approve that, and then they have the announcement today. But I'm with Danny. The timing of it was awful. As Michigan is on their way to face Penn State, planes in the air, they lay this down when everyone assumed that the reports were accurate, that they were going to announce this at 1 o'clock, and that wasn't the case. Coming up, Kelly in Vegas joins us. We'll check the lines on Michigan's championship status.
Quote, a good state champion caliber high school boys team would smoke the best team in the WNBA. Then this weekend, after the video was posted and the critics, of course, came for him, he doubled down on what he said, posting this on X. Quote, it's sexist to say women's basketball players aren't as good as men's. That was a question, obviously. It's my opinion, and I'm putting $1 million behind it. If I'm wrong, the WNBA team can take my money and make more from one game than they do for the entire season. Okay, so let's get into this because obviously there's a lot of people out there who are just assuming that Clay is being sexist, that he is trying to really punk the WNBA because let's be honest, the ratings for the WNBA aren't great, which is exactly why Clay made the joke at the end of that. If you were to give them $1 million for losing the bet, that would be more than the WNBA would make regularly for one game under normal circumstances. But the fact remains that men and women biologically super different, and that's what he's talking about. We even look at a boys' high school basketball team and the makeup of their players, what they're able to do, their size, their skills, and look at the WNBA players who are oftentimes much older. They're professional basketball players, but still, the level of competition would not at all be on the same playing field. So, Chris, let's get into that. What is your take on this? The fact that people would say that, Clay, you're being sexist, when reality remains men and women, super different, even at very different ages, different places in their careers, there would be no matchup whatsoever.
I don't even think it's questionable. I love that Clay took it to him. I think a lot of times silence speaks louder than words. The Las Vegas Aces haven't said anything in response yet. Mm-hmm. So, look, you're right. I dug into the rosters, the Las Vegas Aces, and then, look, I've spent some time training at IMG Academy. I work with athletes at a school called Lou High, which is one of the top programs in the country. And we have guards 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". We're on the Aces. The tallest players are 6'3" and 6'4", and those are their bigs. So they don't even have anybody to really account for the bigs on the male teams. And I don't know that it's how in any way is this a sexist
question
thing to say. Yeah.
Well, I have a woman, I think, who will be able to help answer this question. She is super smart. She's super intelligent. I am a big fan of her. Everybody, You're also a big fan of her. We all are. It just has to be said. So let's go ahead and bring in the woman of the hour, Riley Gaines. Hello, Riley. I'm happy to see you again. I feel like I get to spend so much time with you these days.
I know, right? Very good to see you, and I will say it is rainy here as well, which just sucks.
Okay, so are you, I know the last time we talked, you were like bouncing all over the place. Where are you right now?
I'm actually in Nashville, but headed to New York today. So I'll be on deck.
Okay, well, welcome. You get to go from rain to rain.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, Riley, let's get into the topic that we were just discussing. Obviously, Clay being a little bit sarcastic in the way that he framed the question, but he's saying he's willing to make a bet that the WNBA champions, still being the champions, professional basketball players, would not be able to hold a candle to any high school boys basketball team in the country. Is he being sexist, or is he just speaking facts that men and women are very different in terms of what they are capable of athletically?
Boom. Right there. It's not sexist to say men and women are different. It, like you said, it's reality, it's truth, it's common sense, it's logic, it's reasoning. We all know it.
We thought we would get earlier today has happened, where Tony Pettini, the commissioner of the Big Ten, suspending Jim Harbaugh. Currently, it's the final 3 games of the regular season. Suspended on game day. Not allowed to be at the venue for Michigan's games. Of course, as you would expect, Harbaugh boarded the plane earlier this afternoon because no announcement had been made. They're currently in the air. Michigan on their way to take on Penn State. And when the plane lands, we'll get a response from Michigan. That's the assumption. And the response, they've already said, would be to file for an injunction based on anything that would keep Harbaugh from coaching for the Wolverines. Kelly in Vegas joins us. Kelly Stewart, co-host of The Fade with Clay and Kelly. How are you? You good?
And I am good. It's been a fun, busy day, and now the Harbaugh news breaks right before I come on air, and I'm scrambling.
It's perfect. How did it affect the line?
It didn't. Clay and I spoke about it this morning on The Fade. It's not going to. If anything, it might cause some overreaction, have some people pile on Penn State, but depending on which book you like to shop at, there is all the money on Michigan. It is one of the most highly bet sides this week. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, even if Harbaugh isn't on the sidelines.
Well, they have not flinched based on their play. And you can point to the schedule or whatever, but, I mean, with all of the distraction behind the scenes, they've been just fine.
I would have to agree they've been just fine, but that's what happens when you play subpar teams. I know you said you can't point to the schedule, but
I said you can. I said you can point to the schedule.
It's just tough. I think this is Michigan's first real test, first real road test.
Yeah.
And there's an old adage that I've heard about 15 times this week. Michigan's built to beat Ohio State. Ohio State's built to beat Penn State, and Penn State's built to beat Michigan. And it's one big triangle of Big Ten teams that beat up on each other and subsequently keep the other ones out of the college football playoff.
Okay, so are you backing Penn State tomorrow?
Well, I was on Penn State even before this news broke. Unfortunately, my best bet was TCU, and we'll get to that later on in the show. But I know James Franklin, he's just not performed well against top 10 opponents. And we know this. And I don't want to just gloss over it. But what we have seen from this team in the last year and a half is a team that is built to cover spreads, whether he's a home or an underdog. I bet against this team last week with Maryland, and it was my big dud of the week. Obviously, we want to talk defenses here, and I think one could argue that Michigan's a better defense. One could argue that Penn State's a better defense, depending on which type of metrics you like to look at. I just think Penn State has the better resume here at home. I know it's a big noon kickoff at Fox, and I know a lot of people are complaining about that. I was just at a big noon kickoff last weekend. There's plenty of atmosphere, plenty of anger, and plenty of hype surrounding those games as well. So even though it's not a whiteout, I would not be surprised to see that place absolutely rocking.
So I don't know about you. I'm surprised that Tony Petitti opened the investigation, notified Michigan of what they were looking at, gave them the evidence. Michigan responded, all that. I'm not surprised that it's 2 or 3 game suspension on the surface level here, because I don't know why you notify Michigan that you're getting involved just like the NCAA because you want to affect it now if you're just going to hand out a fine. To me, that's weak, and you only open the door for this if you're trying to come over the top. And the timing of the announcement while they're in the air going to Penn State, that is intentional. Like, to me, it's a response without a statement, but making a statement based on how they announced it. And Michigan can't just immediately respond after they're almost like daring them to suspend him for multiple games because they were going to respond immediately, and they can't right now.
They cannot, and that is definitely a statement from the Big Ten that says, hey, I think there's a lot of other coaches putting pressure on them as well, right? This isn't just because Michigan and Ohio State seem to be the 2 biggest money makers, if you will, in that conference. Yep. Doesn't mean that they get to just slide by with some serious allegations here.
I'm surprised by that, though. I am.
You are?
Yeah, I mean, all these 11 programs are helping produce evidence. I'm thinking, like, now there's a precedent set for a sportsmanship policy. And, I mean, if Michigan's got to be going, okay, if you're going to look into us, how about the evidence we've handed over to you about Ohio State and Rutgers from Purdue? Like, now Petitti's got to go after that based on the precedent he's done here for the sportsmanship policy.
Oh, I would have to agree. This just opened up a huge can of worms, and there's going to be a lot of finger pointing across that entire conference and probably even across lots of college football in general, because there's always been a quietness of, how do I say this? And it's maybe gets said on the golf course a lot.
Yeah.
If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying, right? And,
absolutely.
And you kind of have to wonder, sometimes bigger name programs have gotten away with things or slaps on the wrist where we've seen other schools basically get the death penalty for certain things that they've done. So I do think that the Big Ten is setting a precedent here, but it is saying, like, all right, we can't allow this to happen. We have to open an investigation. I don't know if I really think that this is something worth suspending Harbaugh over. I mean, I've seen some evidence. I've seen some weird things, but it is, you still are the head coach of this football program, whether you knew it or not. Somebody knew it, right? And that's kind of the precedent that needs to be set. Either you can't be that an arm's length away from some of your assistant coaches or even just guys on the staff.
I'm sure you've discussed this in your circles, Kelly. I'm curious about how this could have affected the line, the spread, the over-under, because that's where the scandal takes it to another level with the money that's involved in all of that, compared to just, the coach here can look over across our sideline and get the signals. We sent Connor Stallions out, and he's going through all this. But it had to affect, from the bigger picture, the actual spread on game day. It had to.
So I'm gonna say this, Hutton, and this, whether it's NFL, whether it's college basketball, whether it's WNBA, I don't care. Gambling gets a really bad rep. For some reason, the general public thinks that these wise guys in New Jersey have just boatloads of money to pay off coaches or players or
Connor Stallions.
Or Connor Stallions to be able to throw some of these football games. I'm going to go ahead and play the devil's advocate here and say, of course, if we looked back, it could have affected the spread. Is that a coincidence? Possibly. But I don't actually think that it's any more than what we talked about with you and Chad back, what was it, week 3, week 4 with Sean McVay. Did he know the spread? Is that why he kicked the field goal? Maybe. There was a joke in the club level last weekend of Austin with me and some Texas backers, and I said, Chris Kleiman knew the spread. That's why he didn't kick the field goal to tie and go to double overtime. You know, me being a little facetious, if you will, because I had K-State +4, but of course had some on the money line. Those are the kind of funny things that just make you go, because the bookmakers are that good at their jobs.
They are. And you're very good at predicting and dialed in. I believe you're on a hot streak right now based on the information you're giving us. We can get to that coming up. But if we're going to ask the question about Sean McVay, we have to ask the question here. That's my overall point.
That is fair. I mean, I would have to look back at the exact games that are on the list. I mean, are we saying that Michigan has done this every single game over the last 2.5 years?
Well, I mean, college football playoff last year, that line was, wrong team favored.
That it was.
And TCU knew it was coming.
And that they did. That is a very good point, Hutton. You know, I have to kind of wonder again. I shy on the air of non-conspiracy theory when it comes to my profession, but
I know.
You're not wrong.
I'm not trying to stir up a conspiracy. I'm just like, to me, that's where the allegations take a huge step forward instead of just, everybody's doing it. It goes into the Alabama baseball coach realm, and I mean, it just takes another life, more jet fuel to the hatred of whatever's going on in Ann Arbor compared to everywhere else where everyone else is doing it.
I would have to agree with you there. Again, for my profession, I hope you're wrong. We've been dodging allegations for years in terms of fixing games or matches or whatever, because there are a lot of coincidences. Last night, Bears game landed 3. Spread was 3.5.
And Vegas always knows. By the way, I'm not necessarily insinuating Vegas knew. But if you knew the signs, you knew how to play that, right?
You did. And also, again, there are certain, donors, if you will, that probably partake in some gambling. And you want to make some of those guys happy, whether it gets said out loud or not. I can make a joke about it or not. There are people with more money than I'll ever have that can have way more influence on college football athletics or basketball athletics than I could ever imagine.
So you mentioned you don't think the penalty warrants the crime here for Harbaugh. I tend to agree, but based on how fast this went. But I also like the fact that it went fast because it's affecting the current roster and program instead of a future Michigan roster. Like there is some validity to the fact that he stepped in, the conference stepped in, while I called them earlier the sloths of the investigation going on with the NCAA. They can take all the time they want, and by that time Harbaugh would be coaching in the league. Like I at least we get some clarity on the background and the investigation and the information that the Big Ten has here.
I would agree with that. I would like to be privy to some more of that information. Unfortunately, I feel like they're kind of keeping us in the dark outside of what we find on the interwebs and chat rooms and, lovely X, depending on what people are trying to guess at that moment in time. That was actually the first tweet I got was from a source that likes to be first, not always right. And that's the first thing I said to one of my buddies while I was waiting to come on air. I go, no, I need to see from a more legitimate source. And then he sent me another one. I said, okay, now I believe that this actually happened. And that's kind of how I feel about everything that we're hearing out of Michigan, whether it's other coaches sending over tape. I mean, yes, we've heard from Connor Stallions. We've seen pictures of him on the sidelines. Yes, I think that is very damning evidence in itself. But I do think that there's got to be a little bit more out there than just that. I'd be curious to see what Ohio State has or what these other teams have on Ohio State as well.
So Michigan has released a statement on the Big Ten's disciplinary action, and they confirmed that they're going to try to get the injunction to allow Harbaugh to coach tomorrow.
That doesn't surprise me.
So here's the statement. Let me pull this up here. Internet's really slow right now, Kelly. I got to go back to the text here. Like all members of the Big Ten Conference, we are entitled to a fair, deliberate, and thoughtful process to determine the full set of facts before a judgment is rendered. Today's action by Commissioner Tony Petitti disregards the conference's own handbook, violates basic tenets of due process, and sets an untenable precedent of assessing penalties before an investigation has been completed. We are dismayed at the Commissioner's rush to judgment when there is an ongoing NCAA investigation, one in which we are fully cooperating. That from the University of Michigan. I mean, that's why the injunction will happen and he'll be coaching.
Most likely, yes, I would have to agree with that, especially, what is it, 4:34 on the East Coast right now. We'll see, but I would not be surprised to see them march him out there on the sidelines. And I don't know, maybe we'll get our popcorn ready and see what happens by 2:30 p.m. Hopefully Penn State can just get the W with him on the field.
Without a doubt, he's showing up to the stadium, right? It's specific, not at the venue on game day. I'm just spitballing. What happens if he shows up and the Big Ten wants to make sure he doesn't go through the gates or through the locker room, through the tunnel? What a scene.
That's a very good question. That would
he's
be
showing
a
up.
very
He's showing up.
Oh, I would agree with he's going to show up. He definitely has that type of personality, and I think that probably the athletic director for Michigan is probably saying, go ahead and show up. But I do think it's going to be a fun next, we'll call it, I don't know, 18 hours to see what ends up happening between now and kickoff.
And if James Franklin and Ryan Day don't beat Michigan with Harbaugh off the field and not with his team, that's rough for both. It's rough.
That would be very not great for both. I actually saw a tweet earlier. I didn't get a chance to fact check it, but it was talking about how Michigan plays without Harbaugh when he was off. And I believe it said he was 0-4 against the spread. So when he's not coaching on the sidelines, didn't mean they didn't win the game, but they didn't cover.
Davey brings up a great point. Penn State, this would happen in the SEC. Penn State could have security escort him off the premises and charge him with trespassing.
Ooh.
Bring it on.
Ooh.
Bring it on.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
It does. It's a dumpster fire. We've got our dumpster fire of the week coming up. Also, we will dive into our horrible selections for our great bets of the week in college football. Kelly will crush me and Chad, by the way, he submitted his. And and we'll dive into your best bets, which I will be following because Kelly is on a roll. Stay tuned. Hot Mike with Hutton Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network.
Dabo Sweeney ripping his own fans. Dabo Sweeney at Clemson is, I don't know, they tell me that he's the guy that doesn't like the transfer portal because he's made some comments that weren't exactly supportive of it. Dabo Sweeney has done a job at Clemson that very few thought could be done. Clemson is a town about this big. Well, I better do this, not that, because that's like a white power sign idiots say. But it's about that big. The state is South Carolina. The state is not Clemson. But Dabo Sweeney put Clemson in rarefied air. If you, a couple years ago, were going to name me the 3 best college football teams before Georgia's run here, you'd say Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson. That's kind of who it always came down to. It felt like. So Dabo Sweeney is now the victim of something that is good in one way, but it's bad in another. Incredible expectations of your fan base, meaning 10-2 ain't good enough. It just ain't. You can say whatever you want, but it just ain't. We got to be better. What? We're not in the college football playoff? What? We're not winning a national champion? What? We're 4-2? That's only winning 67% of our games? Here's what Dabo had to say. If you don't go undefeated, people say you're losers, that you're terrible. Let me tell you something. This is why football coaches for years and years and years and years fought the college football playoff. We're at a point in time, and I hate that, where people, if you don't go undefeated, you're losers. You're terrible. It's just a terrible mindset. Honestly, maybe we need to lose a few games and lighten up the bandwagon. Sometimes the bandwagon get a little full. That's the one good thing about going through a little bit of so-called adversity is that you really find out who's with you and who's not. That's all crap. Let me explain to you Dabo Sweeney's day, can I? Dabo Sweeney probably wakes up around 5:30. Dabo Sweeney smokes shit, shower, shave, shampoo, goes to the office. Probably has a meeting at 7. Dabo Sweeney then is probably in different meetings with players or recruits or maybe the administration going and maybe watching film, whatever. Then he has practice. Then after practice, he's doing the same thing. Then in the evening, he's making phone calls. Probably goes home around 10. At no point in time in his day, his week, his month, his year, is he finding out who's with us and who's not with us. It's not like there's a list. Now, maybe you find out what media member wants to rip you, but on a daily basis, a monthly basis, you're not finding out any of this crap. It's very simple. Coaches, if you want to know who's with you, understand that when you lose, nobody's really with you. If you want to know who's really with you, win. And then everybody's really with you. It's literally that simple. As my father used to say to me, Dan, we're with you, win or tie, and we ain't so sure about the tie. So shut up with that stuff, win some football games, and don't sweat it. Seriously, do yourself a favor. Work hard, grab yourself a glass of wine, go sit in your chair, and read a book instead of being on social media or worrying about who is with you and who is not with you.
Kelly, I went to the restroom during the break. Did I have a piece of Kleenex on my face the entire time, that last segment?
I did not see it.
I walked
That's
in
the
and
beauty
saw
of being remote.
What? Yeah. No one in here would have told me, I guess. Making me.
I do feel bad. I feel bad for not noticing. I'm sorry.
Oh, by the way, they say no, so I don't know where it came from. 6th and Peabody, our location. Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. It is Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network, where you can also find the Fade with Kelly and Clay. I know I've seen some of your picks. I'm all in with the run that you've been on. And I was watching where I believe you're third right now in a massive, is it a pick'em league or something that you're in? You say you're third?
I wish it was pick'em. Life would be a lot better for me. But no, it's an against the spread league. You have to pick 7, either college or a mixture of NFL games every single week. It's a Vegas contest. And previously I was never allowed to enter due to my affiliation at other networks. And they said, hey, since you're not there anymore, do you want to join? And I started off so bad. I think I went 2-6 week 1. No, I would have went 2-5. I apologize. And then 3-4. It just was a really slow start. I hit 6-1. 3 weeks in a row, and now we're rocking and rolling.
Yeah, and yes, exactly. And this is like a big time financial deal, right? That's the insinuation.
No,
come on! You said there were some big money people in this.
Well, there's some really, I would call very sharp. No, you're talking about fantasy.
No. I'm talking about I'm talking about your. Yeah, I'm talking about the bets.
Yeah, no, this is, there's some guys that are in this league that I've respected for several years. And the front runner is actually a mentor of mine. He and I worked together 11 years ago now. It's been such a fun run. So
take him down.
I hope so. Listen, that's the difference. Right now, sitting in third place, I'm just relaxed. All I got to do is go 4-3 every week, maybe hit a 5-2, just hit my stride. He's the one with the target on his back.
Yeah, he feels the pressure. He's looking over his shoulder. Davey Hudson joins us. Go ahead. You don't think he is?
No, I was going to say, I don't think he is.
Davey Hudson joins us in studio. Dave, you're pointing out one of the part of the language of the letter.
Yes. Yeah, so during the break, we looked it over, and my favorite part of this letter is, and you guys were talking about the timing in which this all occurred, but the letter stated, By taking this action at this hour, the commissioner is personally inserting himself onto the sidelines and altering the level playing field that he is claiming to preserve.
That's a great response.
And doing so on Veterans Day, a court holiday, to try to thwart the university from seeking immediate judicial relief is hardly a profile in impartiality.
It's a great response. Discussing competitive advantage. Penn State has a competitive advantage with this. And it's due to the deliberate timing from Tony Petitti and the Big Ten. Dumpster fire of the week, Davey. This is,
yes.
I don't think none of us are going with Michigan, right?
Yeah, we did that last week.
Yeah.
It's one of those to where we know this has been the biggest story. There's obviously been, as you say it, where there's smoke, there's fire, and we continue to see more and more smoke. But to get us started, Hutton, I'll let you go for what's that one moment this week that just encapsulated an absolute and total dumpster fire?
Well, it's Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin, who on Wednesday they filed for the lawsuit to be dismissed from DeSanto Rollins in regards to the lawsuit that was discrimination based on mental health, sexuality, and more. And less than 24 hours later, there's audio that I'm assuming Rollins recorded, meeting with Lane Kiffin in his office, and Kiffin's going off. It's a 42-second clip, and what's a much longer recording. And the dumpster fire is the reaction to the 42 seconds when Kiffin just flat out told the truth. I mean, mental health is an issue, but you can't ghost for 2 weeks and expect the head coach of a program anywhere to just be like, oh, sorry, man. Like, let's make sure that you're taken care of on the field and you're right back. And while he said, oh, you're off the team, get out. Technically, he's receiving all of the benefits of being on the roster currently. All of the student and player benefits of being at Ole Miss. It's a dumpster fire just because it doesn't look good on Kiffin, but it's also just obvious that you have to conduct yourself at a certain standard if you're going to be a member of a team. And this guy did not do that.
My favorite comment from Kiffin on that one was, what world are you living in?
Yeah.
Where you can just, it goes back to like you're talking about, HUD, like it's a societal issue.
I had some other favorite words there, but yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not just that. It was just the perception I take from this, guys, is he wanted to have all the benefits, but he didn't want to actually pick up the phone and say anything. He even admitted in the recording he's not ready to talk to Kiffin. You got to be able to communicate in a much better manner, and I don't think the timing is no surprise. If you're filing for that to be dismissed and then that drops, that's why. I don't think it's because they're playing Georgia this week.
Kelly, I'll let you go next.
Yeah, are we sure it's not because they're playing Georgia this week?
No. I think it's because they Ole Miss and Kiffin filed for that lawsuit to be dismissed the day before.
And that's fair, and they should. Listen, you guys mentioned it being a societal thing. I think it is prevalent in all of the generations that are younger than me, however many that is now. But it is a thing where.
But it's our generation. It pisses me off. It's our generation that has softened the next generation.
Oh no! It's our parents' generation because they kind of did it with us.
Oh,
I have some people that are my age that tend to do things like this. I think that there's a lot of issues that we have as a society, whether we have mental health issues that need to be addressed more, but it's the way about going about it, right? This, I mean, what is he, 20, 21 years old? This guy is
maybe
a kid,
yeah,
right? So somebody never taught him how to persevere and how to deal with your issues like a man that says, hey, you need to walk up. Maybe it's not Lane, but maybe it's your respective coach that's right above you. Maybe it's a grad assistant and say to somebody, I need help. This is a problem. Tell me what to do. How can I handle this? You don't ghost your football coach. You don't ghost your boss, but that is this culture of these kids. That's why they ghost each other on dates, and they think that that's somehow acceptable. I mean,
well, you can text. You don't have to speak now. You can just text. That's all this would have.
The immaturity is really sad to see, and I'm sure he probably does have some issues here. But they maybe could have been remedied. There could have been some discussions had. Maybe he could have gotten better help had he not chosen the route of just complete and utter silence. That's the perplexing part to me.
Totally agree. What's the dumpster fire, Kelly?
Yeah, the dumpster fire. Davey and I were texting about this. About 2 o'clock, I just hit like a wall. I mean, I'm having a coffee at almost 5 p.m. at night.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know why? Because I still have 2 more shows to do today. And daylight savings time has just wrecked me. It has wrecked my dog. It has wrecked my soul. Why are we still doing this? It is an absolute unmitigated dumpster fire. It has ruined me since Sunday morning. And I cannot get out of it. My dog is mad at me at 4:30 that he hasn't eaten yet. It's like, what is going on here? It's only a 1 hour fallback, but it feels like 3 hours. The sun's going down at 5:30. I hate it. I'm over it. It is a dumpster fire. I thought this was supposed to be done.
You're absolutely right. It should be done away with, and it came back into the mix in like the 60s. And I'm thinking, what are we doing? Why are we bringing this back?
We're not farmers.
Yeah.
I understand why they originally created it, but even the farmers would agree with us.
Yeah, but it went away from like the 20s to the 60s based on what I was reading. And for whatever reason, it was, let's bring it back. Let's bring it back.
Some government official is just doing us dirty, and I can't figure out who it is. But mark my word, if I find out, I'm going to ruin their re-election campaign.
I mean, I would vote. I need someone to run on the campaign promise that they'll do away with this. I'm with you.
On the other side, I mean, if we didn't have daylight savings time, then we would miss that critical scene from National Treasure where he's looking at the back of the clock to the water bottle on the $100 bill. So that's the one good thing that comes from daylight savings time, but I agree with you on the rest.
What a great actor, Nicolas Cage.
He's incredible. He is a national treasure. All right, guys. So my dumpster fire of the week has to do with officiating in basketball. And to start us off, it's the NBA. This past Wednesday, superstar Giannis Antetokounmpo was ejected 3 minutes into the second half for basically giving a stare down. It's a guy that we've talked about the NBA's issues in getting players, one, just to play. Load management is a terrible problem that they've had. They've tried to address it this offseason. So when you get to the point the official takes the game in his hands and ejects one of the league's best superstars to where you're not able to watch him for an entire second half in a game where he's looking like he's going to be putting on a clinic, that's an incredibly problematic issue that the league is having. On top of this, outside of the NBA, I know the NCAA women's tournament, they just did an audit on their officiating, found that did not live up to par. And I get it. Being an official is a hard job. It is not one that comes with really any praise whatsoever. All you're going to get is the negative side effects of people being mad at you. But at the same time, you can't hurt your own product by having players taken out and then, two, just coming back after the fact and being like, all right, yeah, we screwed up. It's like, well, what are you going to do because you screwed up? At least give us a reason as to how you're going to improve that product moving forward. And as of right now, we don't have that, and that's why this is my dumpster fire of the week.
Yeah, it's a good. I mean, the ejection of Giannis was awful. At least in the NBA, they give you like the final, what is it, the final 2-minute report or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love that in the NFL. Something. Hey, Kelly, can you explain the in-season tournament?
No, I don't understand the madness.
I can't either.
Here's what. Okay, so I used to actually, in my former life, I did a lot of work for the NBA, and I used to care a lot about the NBA because it was my job. And there is some money to be made gambling the NBA, but it's in April. It's not in November. And you know why? It's everything Davey just mentioned, load management. So from my understanding, they started doing these in-season tournaments to kind of avoid players wanting to do that. And instead, as he mentioned, now we're calling egregious things against one of the best basketball players in the association. You're absolutely right. People buy tickets because they want to see the stars. People tune in on TV because they want to see the stars. I guarantee the watchability score of that game went down tenfold the second Giannis got ejected from the game. That's just absolutely and utterly absurd. And unfortunately, it happens in every single sport. There is no consistency top to bottom, and it is infuriating.
Chad brought this up, and he's spot on. How do you have an in-season tournament and not have a bracket challenge? It's impossible to fill out a bracket right now based on how this is set up which makes no sense.
Yeah, that makes no sense whatsoever. There's got to be a motivating factor, right?
I guess.
To say, okay, we get something towards the playoffs in April because we won this in-season tournament in November. I just think it is I understand what they're trying to do, but I think they didn't put a lot of thought into it, and that's the unfortunate part. There's some big-time leagues that are scrambling, and it is a real thing. My co-host Clay Travis talks about it all the time. There are numbers dropping with certain sports, and the NBA is one of them.
It is.
I'll start tonight at 6 Eastern if you're interested. Watching more of the in-season tournament.
Thanks, Davey. We'll have you report on that Monday. The very latest. Who's in, who's out. My guess is everyone's still in on Monday.
You would be correct. Yes, we're still in the round robin play.
Pool play. It's like the World Cup.
There you go. You can't, even if you lose, you're not out yet.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's going to play in the regular season. These count. The only thing I do know, every game counts for playoff hopes except for the championship game of this, which again is like whatever. But you get $500,000. Everybody does.
There you go.
If you win, you can take that and join Kelly's picks against the spread league. With the buy-in. The buy-in there.
No, you're so funny. That is not exactly the case, but would be nice because then I could just take the whole spring and summer off, right?
All right, so let's say we had $500,000 to put on one game this weekend. Kelly's going to tell us
that's not how this works.
Why?
Because we have to preserve that $500,000. That is our baby. That is our bankroll. We don't put that on one game. If I called you and I said, "Hi, and I've got the best stock tip for you ever,"
I just want to know. I want to know your confidence level. We'll get it when we come back. Plus the very latest with Michigan, their response to the Big Ten about the Harbaugh suspension.
Quote, a good state champion caliber high school boys team would smoke the best team in the WNBA. Then this weekend, after the video was posted and the critics, of course, came for him, he doubled down on what he said, posting this on X. Quote, it's sexist to say women's basketball players aren't as good as men's. That was a question, obviously. It's my opinion, and I'm putting $1 million behind it. If I'm wrong, the WNBA team can take my money and make more from one game than they do for the entire season. Okay, so let's get into this because obviously there's a lot of people out there who are just assuming that Clay is being sexist, that he is trying to really punk the WNBA because let's be honest, the ratings for the WNBA aren't great, which is exactly why Clay made the joke at the end of that. If you were to give them $1 million for losing the bet, that would be more than the WNBA would make regularly for one game under normal circumstances. But the fact remains that men and women biologically super different, and that's what he's talking about. We even look at a boys' high school basketball team and the makeup of their players, what they're able to do, their size, their skills, and look at the WNBA players who are oftentimes much older. They're professional basketball players, but still, the level of competition would not at all be on the same playing field. So, Chris, let's get into that. What is your take on this? The fact that people would say that, Clay, you're being sexist, when reality remains men and women, super different, even at very different ages, different places in their careers, there would be no matchup whatsoever.
I don't even think it's questionable. I love that Clay took it to him. I think a lot of times silence speaks louder than words. The Las Vegas Aces haven't said anything in response yet. Mm-hmm. So, look, you're right. I dug into the rosters, the Las Vegas Aces, and then, look, I've spent some time training at IMG Academy. I work with athletes at a school called Lou High, which is one of the top programs in the country. And we have guards 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". We're on the Aces. The tallest players are 6'3" and 6'4", and those are their bigs. So they don't even have anybody to really account for the bigs on the male teams. And I don't know that it's how in any way is this a sexist thing to say. Yeah.
Well, I have a woman, I think, who will be able to help answer this question. She is super smart. She's super intelligent. I am a big fan of her. Everybody, you're also a big fan of her. We all are. It just has to be said. So let's go ahead and bring in the woman of the hour, Riley Gaines. Hello, Riley. I'm happy to see you again. I feel like I get to spend so much time with you these days.
I know, right? Very good to see you, and I will say it is rainy here as well, which just sucks.
Okay, so are you, I know the last time we talked, you were like bouncing all over the place. Where are you right now?
I'm actually in Nashville, but headed to New York today. So I'll be on deck.
Okay, well, welcome. You get to go from rain to rain.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, Riley, let's get into the topic that we were just discussing. Obviously, Clay being a little bit sarcastic in the way that he framed the question, but he's saying he's willing to make a bet that the WNBA champions, still being the champions, professional basketball players, would not be able to hold a candle to any high school boys basketball team in the country. Is he being sexist, or is he just speaking facts that men and women are very different in terms of what they are capable of athletically?
Boom. Right there. It's not sexist to say men and women are different. It, like you said, it's reality, it's truth, it's common sense, it's logic, it's reasoning. We all know it.
Like that, the final hour is here. Friday edition. We've made it. Headed into the weekend. Great college football slate. NFL, no. Nope. This week 10 is not great in terms of matchups. Maybe we get some great games. Take the under. Join us on the OutKick network. It includes YouTube. Search out OutKick. Subscribe to the channel. You can catch out all the great shows. Join us live in the chat. Normally, Chad is there chatting with you. He has the day off. He's back with us on Monday. Kelly in Vegas sticks around with us. Kelly Stewart, co-host of The Fade with Clay Travis, available at OutKick.com and the OutKick Network. Kelly, your first unchaperoned concert. Mine was, there's a band here. Mine was Matchbox 20, Lifehouse, and Everclear.
I honestly don't know.
No parents.
Well, so you have to remember, I grew up in Manhattan, Kansas, and we had a big country concert every single summer called Country Stampede.
Who came through there?
Oh, everybody. I mean, I remember Tim McGraw. Martina. Oh, of course, Martina. She's a Kansas girl. But there was always lots of great big headlines. I mean, we had Alabama one year. There was some really great up-and-coming concerts like in the mid-'90s. And I'm trying to think of if I actually got to go alone or if like I still rode with my mom.
At some point you did though, right?
Yeah, in college, and I definitely got in trouble, but that's a whole other story for another day. I'm really trying to think of the first concert I went to unchaperoned, and it had to have been a Country Stampede, probably like 16 or 17.
Oh, it was a big deal for me. I left the farm. We're about an hour and 45 minutes from downtown Nashville, which is where the farm is, and yeah, it was a big deal driving to Nashville unchaperoned for the concert.
Oh, I'm sure. That'd have been like me driving to Kansas City unchaperoned. And I can't tell you the first time that happened either, because I probably didn't ask and I just went and hoped I didn't get caught.
Maybe Jim Harbaugh has a chaperone whenever he's suspended tomorrow. I don't know the policy that's in place here. Whenever he was suspended for the first 3 games of the regular season this year, suspended by Michigan, self-imposed for the recruiting violations, he said prior to week 1 he was probably not even going to watch the game. He's going to go, do something else, maybe with one of his sons or something. What does he do in Happy Valley? He can't get into the stadium, which is the rule. I mean, that's the penalty. He's not allowed on the premise of a venue on game day. I read the initial report from Pete Thamel where it said Jim Harbaugh can't be on the sideline on game day. And I thought, could he be in the booth? Could he be upstairs?
Oh.
But no, he can't. The Big Ten clarified that in their statement, thankfully. The one time that they've actually been proactive in telling us something.
There you go. You got to appreciate that. Every once in a while, they do their due diligence.
Chad and I always give Kelly our top pick, our top bet of the week. And I'll give you mine first and then tell you what Chad sent me earlier today. I love this bet, which means you're going to hate it. James Madison is 9-0. They're 21st in the AP poll currently, and they are 6-1 against the spread over their last 7 games. They're hosting UConn, who just got boat raced by Tennessee, 56-point loss. And James Madison is a 24.5-point favorite against UConn, and they're not eligible for postseason play for the second consecutive year, and they should be, by the way, because they would miss out on potentially a New Year's Six bowl game if they can get ahead of Tulane. I'm taking James Madison, minus 24.5. Chad is playing his cards here on Arkansas. Arkansas -2 at home against Auburn. And he sends this. He says, Arkansas played a little offense in the swamp after firing their OC, and he's going to ride that momentum further by saying that they're going to cover -2 against Auburn.
This one's tough. I'm going to be honest with you, Hutton. I don't know if I could go against either one of you. I was on Arkansas last week.
Yes.
I said they would get their first win ever in the swamp. They did. Can't believe we actually even had to sweat that one in overtime. How ridiculous. But look, this is a really solid Arkansas team. I actually said on the fade that they were the best 2-win team in college football, now best 3-win team in college football. And that's because Sam Pittman is great against the spread. Well, at least in the SEC. Now, here's something to look at when you look at Auburn. If you remember, I think it was Chad was on A&M, and I said, oh, I like Auburn here on the road. This defense is going to come to play. Well, the defense came to play, and the offense has showed up in one game this year, and that was against the Georgia Bulldogs, and I don't even know if I'm going to give them that much credit is to say they showed up. They just showed up more than any other game. I have to side with Chad here and take Arkansas.
Wow. I mean,
I do.
He's going to be so upset that you side with him while he's not here.
Well, I sided with him last week with Vanderbilt, and he said that anytime I'm against him, it is basically guaranteed he's going to win. And of course, Vanderbilt didn't cover. So I'm going to say that again this week. It's good luck for you. Yeah, James Madison should absolutely handle Connecticut. This is a problem, right?
Why is this 24.5?
Well, listen, here's the thing. Jim Mora, year one, he got everybody super excited about this UConn Huskies team, and then it's just been really disappointing this year. The problem is the bookmakers know they're going to get only one-way action. James Madison, number one run defense against the run. How's Connecticut going to score? I mean, this could be like 42-10 final, and neither one of us would be surprised.
Statement wins down the stretch for James Madison to just further hammer home the fact that they should be postseason eligible.
And they absolutely should be.
Yeah, they can't even win their own conference this year, which is just like last year, just stupid, given the fact that they're playing all but one game against FBS, which, again, soapbox. All right, so Penn State, Michigan, you've alluded to this earlier, but for those just joining us, Kelly, let them know how you're playing this game, given the news and really the fact that the suspension, at least for now, hasn't changed the spread.
No, and it's not going to, I don't think. I mean, listen, Michigan, looking at some of the splits from the sportsbook guys that I like to follow on Twitter, all the money's coming out of Michigan, and rightfully so. Michigan has just boat raced every team that they've played, right?
They have.
Again, though, who have they played? Rutgers.
Well, I've seen Ohio State.
Minnesota.
Ohio State kind of sleepwalk, and I don't see Michigan sleepwalk.
That's fair. You know, some teams are better coached than others, but I think this is going to be a real test for Michigan. I may eat my words. Michigan wins this game by 10, and guess what? Hey, I will say that Michigan deserves to be in the college football playoff, but don't forget they still have to beat the number one team that I can't figure out how they're number one on my birthday. That's a whole nother argument to be had. But look, I always argue, take the better defense plus the points here. And if you look at certain metrics, you could argue that Penn State's the better defense here. I just hope offensively they can get enough done to win this football game outright, but I did take the 4.5.
I haven't seen a lot from TCU. We've seen early in the season great things from Texas, but now Malik Murphy's the quarterback, and he didn't play well last week. They leave with a win, though. Sorry to bring that up again, but the comeback was amazing. How do you play this, Texas taking on TCU, and what is a big game, big matchup for Texas, because right now they're on the path to the Big 12 championship game?
They sure are, and now Quinn Ewers is back. And Steve Sarkisian is saying he's going to start tomorrow, so that kind of threw me for a loop. I have 10.5 in pocket. The line's now 12.5. You never like to see that. But I would say Malik Murphy is an okay quarterback, right? He was throwing around 50%. He did throw 2 interceptions last week. And I wanted to play against his first road start. That's why I liked TCU here. But I'm not going to discredit the fact that Quinn Ewers is not fully healthy, and he's not that much more of an upgrade from Malik Murphy as it stands on Friday afternoon. Now, I know the Horned Frogs, they lost to Colorado, and it was all of a sudden Sonny Dykes, and the wheels fell off with this team that was in the college football playoff last year. But we expected some regression from them, right? They had 8 guys go to the NFL.
That's fair, yeah.
And maybe they didn't expect it, but I sure as heck did. I took their under-season wins, but I think they have a real shot here to keep it close versus Texas. If Texas stumbles, steps on their own toes like we've seen them do historically, I think they could lose this game. And I know a lot of Longhorn fans don't want to hear it, but Steve does not blow out teams. And there's a reason why TCU has won 3 of its last 4, and they were underdogs in all 4. So I like them here as an underdog once again.
Florida State takes on Miami. Is Tyler Van Dyke playing in this game at quarterback for Miami?
Unfortunately.
Okay, so that affects how you play this.
No, it does, and I shouldn't make fun of Tyler. I think he is an okay quarterback. I'm more concerned about Mario Cristobal absolutely just fumbling the win here. This is an FSU team that I didn't understand the preseason love. I really didn't. And I had buddies texting me that they have the best defensive line in college football. And I started looking a little bit more and I'm going, hey, you guys, I don't know how much I trust Mike Norvell and this team. Well, guess what? Now they're sitting in the top 4 and I may have to eat my words. But I have not been impressed with this team outside of that LSU game. Have they shown some great performances? Sure. Maybe the Clemson one you could argue, but even Clemson's taken a real step back this year, as we know. And then last week versus Pittsburgh, maybe they were looking ahead to this game, right? If you remember 45-3 there at Hard Rock Stadium, FSU just throttled this team. And something that I always tell people, you cannot quantify, that is revenge. But I can promise you these kids have not forgotten. And when you are in the top 4 and everybody's talking college football playoff, what did we say about the contest I'm in? Now, all of a sudden, you have the target on your back. 18-7 against the spread. The dog is in the last 25 of the series with 12 outright winners. I think 2 touchdowns is too many in Tallahassee.
So, target in the NFL, who has the target on their back this week in this lineup for Week 10? Because Kansas City's on the bye, Miami's on the bye, and Philadelphia also on the bye.
This week is gross. You mentioned it. There's not anything exciting. What's the most exciting game on the slate?
It's probably
San Francisco and Jacksonville?
That's it. It should have been flexed. Yeah, that's it.
Well, we can't get into the flexing thing because it absolutely should have been. Instead, we get Jets at Raiders. Can't wait to take a nap for that one because that is exactly what that looks like. Is an absolute and utter snooze fest, like 9-6 final. I've got one game that I got to the window on and one game that I'm ultimately going to get to the window on. And nobody wants to hear this because it's Monday Night Football and it's the Denver Broncos.
Okay. So their defense has played well recently.
Well, better than they did to start the season. We'll say that much, right? Like before the bye, 19, 17, and 9 points. So yes, I would like to give them a little bit of credit here. We'll see if Buffalo's offense can get something going because they just haven't. This last 5 games, they've really struggled. Just 2-3. And oh, by the way, those 2 wins to the Giants, which they should have probably lost. And then the Buccaneers. It has just not been good in Buffalo. And I'm playing against that once again. Look, this defense is banged up. I don't trust them. And shockingly, I mean, if you look behind me, there's a Broncos helmet. So I am the biggest criticizer of the Denver Broncos and have just been very mean to Russell Wilson. But this year, right now, as it stands today, 66% of his passes are completions, 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. I think this team is going to dink and dunk their way down the field and keep this one within a touchdown. It could be 24-21 final, and I'll go to bed happy on Monday night.
Broncos country, let's ride with the less than 200 yards passing from Russell Wilson in every game offensively. We hit dumpster fire. Now, Davey jumps back in as we go rapid fire. Pick your poison. And these are awful scenarios for us.
That is correct, Hutton. And as usual, if you want to play it long at home, you are more than welcome. I'm going to give out a couple of bad options, and you have to pick the one that you would live with.
Awful
again,
options.
It's pick your poison. We're actually going to switch things up a little bit. We're going to start with our SEC underdog. That's what I'm titling this one. But what is happening is one of these teams has to get you a win this weekend. And your options are Ole Miss upsetting Georgia, Kentucky upsetting Alabama, or Florida upsetting LSU.
Kelly, am I stupid to think it's Florida here? Because Ole Miss, Jackson Dart does not play well on the road. Kentucky's not going to beat Alabama based on the way the Crimson Tide have been playing. And, I mean, LSU's defense, bad. And Florida, at least from the quarterback position, has been consistent.
I don't hate that. I'm trying to somehow make a case for Kentucky in my head, but you're right. I don't see them winning that game. As far as LSU's defense, though, in regards to Florida, sure, absolutely. I mean, Graham Mertz is okay. I bet against his team last week, but he's not solely to blame. And I will say, Florida needs another win to become bowl eligible, and I don't think they're going to get it. They could get it over Missouri. I should take that back. I don't know if they can get it over LSU, but if I had to pick, I guess I got to agree with you, Hutton, because I can't stomach Kentucky. And I know that Ole Miss is a very popular underdog. People seem to think that they can go in. But I'm going to tell you this right now. The number 10 team catching double digits, it kind of tells you all you need to know about that game.
Yeah. Davey, time for one more.
Yes. So in this next one, pretend you're a Michigan fan. We're going to call this the Michigan Dilemma.
Okay. Michigan man.
Would you rather have a postseason ban for this season, but no long-term punishment for Jim Harbaugh? I know they're saying 3 right now. There could be more. Or would you rather make the postseason and have a chance to win a natty this year, but no, Harbaugh is out at the end of the season?
Well, I'll go quick here. Harbaugh has been trying to get out the last 2 seasons, so I'll take the championship.
I can guarantee you he's back for at least 3 more seasons.
I'll take the championship.
Take the championship and run. That's an easy no-brainer. You take the championship and run.
It's a chance.
He's going to be a Las Vegas Raider.
You're not necessarily guaranteed to win. You just have a chance.
Oh, you just get to be in.
You're not banned from the postseason. Yeah, you would play the season out like we're planning on doing for the next several weeks now in this scenario.
Michigan fans are begging for that to happen right now, so I'll still take that. They've been making the argument against a suspension. If you're doing that, it's because you want you're in. They're going to play exactly how they have. Hey, Kelly, thank you for joining today. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Loving the fade.
It's been a great time.
Loving the fade. And again, I'm following all the picks today that you gave us because you've been crushing them. Kelly Stewart, the fade with Kelly and Clay. Check it out weekly on OutKick. Merill Hodge jumps in the mix next. Hot Mic with Hutton with her rolls on across the OutKick network.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You got to lean into the turns. You really got to lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. A bold taste of a Southern legend.
The name. Merill Hodge joins us on Hot Mic with Hutton Withrow across the OutKick Network. Number 1, factor back. Number 2, that is a hell of a knot you can tie with the suits. How are you, Merill? Good to have you back on, man.
It's good to be back, Jonathan. Sorry I'm missing the tie.
Hey, hey.
I got the memo, so it'll be there next time.
No. The relaxed. I just want the tutorial on how you did that, but that's, we can do that for that's for your TikTok next time, Merill.
I got you. Okay.
Hey, what was your reaction when you heard that Jim Harbaugh, is sitting out for the time being? We'll see what happens with the court system playing out, but that Jim Harbaugh right now currently suspended for 3 games to end the regular season, and he won't be able to coach on game day, starting as of right now tomorrow in Happy Valley against Penn State.
Well, I actually don't know about all the information and all the things that have been going on there, other than what I have heard is it's not good.
Yeah.
It's disturbing from a bunch of different angles, a bunch of different levels, and it's probably not going to end up well. I don't see, listen, the head guy is always responsible for everything under him. Whether you know it or you don't know it, you got to know it, and you got to stay on top of it. And it's probably not going to end up well.
And hard to believe that he didn't know what was going on there, given the circumstances.
Exactly.
Yeah, Merill Hodge
True
with
story.
us. Hey, his brother, John, another great job with the Ravens. AFC North dominating.
Yeah.
We've never seen a division get all 4 teams in the postseason. What percentage chance would you give it right now? Right now, they're all in, halfway through the season.
Well, it makes it hardest because you got to play each other. That's some of the biggest problem with getting all four in when you're playing that good and you are that good. Let's just put it. Let's make it easy to kind of identify who's going to get there. I always go by this. I've always gone by this because it's how you win championships. Teams win championships. Okay. So if you look at teams, then you got to look at all the different phases and strengths of that team, offensively, defensively, and special teams. And that's where you start to find, what kind of team you have and do they have sustainability. One of the most important things in our league, even though people say it is, they don't use it very much anymore. It's, not a big part of the offenses. People that say that don't know the NFL then and haven't studied the NFL and they don't know how to win championships. You still have to run the football in this league. It's one of the most critical ways to control the tempo, and that is one of the most critical components if you're going to win consistently. Now, I'll just throw the Ravens in there. Okay, what is the one thing, as even though Lamar has struggled in the passing game at certain degrees over his development, which he's playing much better now, but I'll get that in a second. Why have they always been in games? Why are they always in games? Two reasons. They do a great job of stopping the run, and they do a great job of running it. They'll always be in a game.
Physical.
They'll always be in a game, period. What has Cincinnati, Joe Burrow is back to, he's the best pure pocket passer in football, period. When it just comes to pocket feel, awareness, instincts, anticipation, accuracy, processing, he's the best. But they're running the football too. And they have a lot of phases to their offense. So then that's where you got to go to the next step. Is how many phases to that offense have to be defended and how good are they and which ones can beat you. So if you have three levels of phases in a passing game, vertical, intermediate, and short, and you can do all three, that's trouble. If you can run the football strong side, weak side, inside, outside, zone, man stuff, that's tough. And the Ravens have a lot of that I just described. Cincinnati has a lot of that. They're a little more dynamic in the passing game. Then you flip their defenses around. How they play the run, how they play the pass, what kind of pressure defenses do they have? What is their special teams component? Cincinnati, Cleveland and actually Pittsburgh don't match up to those two are their offenses. Their phases, they really struggle. They're inconsistent. Cleveland's defense is terrific. The Steelers' defense is terrific, although they've taken some wounds, at the inside linebacker position. Their starting linebacker gone. Holcomb last week, and that's a big blow. You really didn't get to see it in the Thursday night game, but you might see it going forward, and until Mika Fitzpatrick comes back, they're really vulnerable back there. So they got some critical starters that are hurt. So we'll have to see how that works out. But, you look at those teams, and the Ravens and Cincinnati I think, stand out just from all those different phases on all sides of the ball. And they keep getting better, and that's what you got to do at this point.
Merill Hodge with us on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network. What's really going on between Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick?
Well, I really don't know, to be honest with you.
It feels like Brady and Belichick in a way.
Yeah. Listen, sometimes, when you don't win, things just, everybody falls under pressure. Everybody's under scrutiny, and everybody wants to cast fingers, point blame, make excuses. And, good ownership, listen, I'd consider Mr. Kraft a very good owner. You try to keep that in-house, no matter who it is. I got in this league, and the majority of my career was spent with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I'm familiar with great ownership. I was drafted when the Chief was still alive. I played for Mr. Rooney. I've known Art, who's really the president now, and he's, they're foundationally the same, and they keep things in house. They don't let things get awry. And it's about ownership, and so you kind of see these kind of things going on. It's actually I'm a little taken back by it a little bit, because that's something I didn't think would come about in this era, especially with Belichick. The respect I think he deserves and he's earned.
Yeah, I was stunned in the preseason. We had some guests on from Foxborough and Boston Globe, and asking them, hey, is there anything to the hot seat? And they're like, oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like the worst kept secret there, even though we haven't heard from Robert Kraft, which I think adds to it a bit in a weird way.
Yeah.
And, it's just, you're right. It's bizarre giving what that organization represented with, you mentioned consistency with the Steelers, all the titles that the Patriots are winning now. Everyone's saying about, you better go win in Germany against the Colts. Whatever. If you're going to fire him, you trade him, don't you?
Yeah, listen, I just don't. Well, listen, I'm done saying, well, that could never happen. Listen, I don't think you ever file Bill Belichick, especially during the season. I couldn't even imagine that happening. Just because of not just what he's done for the Patriots, really what he's done for football. If you think about Bill Belichick, I was talking to somebody about this the other day. When Chuck Noll retired, okay, the last game in Three Rivers was against the Washington Redskins. Okay, that's who they were at the time.
Yeah.
It wasn't the Commander; they were the Washington Redskins. They played in the Washington Redskins. Chuck had been retired, I want to say like 5-6 years, and I was standing next to him, and everybody wondered why he'd walked away when he did too. By the way, so I just asked him. I go, "Do you miss it?" And he turned to me and he said, "I'm not a recruiter." And man, see, he was just a man of few words. He would say things that just was like, man, that's everything. Well, that's when free agency was hitting. He believed in building teams with the draft. He didn't want to go get free agents. He was not going to play in that arena. He did not want to coach in that arena. And now Belichick has played in that arena and the other arena and been successful and won championships in both. And I just think that is incredible, quite honestly. And it'll clearly never be done again because, nobody would probably be around that. I don't know that we'll see we'll see a transition like that in our league where, players become so accessible and you can go get them from other teams. That was a big change what happened in the NFL. We went on strike in 87 for those type of things. So he's just done things where you didn't think. He's played in both arenas and won championships in both. And I just think that speaks volumes.
Merill Hodge, our guest on OutKick. How worried should Bills fans be about their team right now with the struggles and the turnovers and expectations? We weren't really talking about the Bills going into the season. I thought we should, but we have not seen them reach that level since that overtime game in Kansas City where they didn't get the football.
Yeah, you're exactly right. They've never really evolved and gotten better, which is, Jonathan, truth. Now, why haven't they gotten better? We go back to that when I was talking about teams win championships, and then you got to look at your team in all these phases. Well, let's look at their offensive phase. Okay, they make it easy. Now, I'm not saying that their passing game and Josh Allen are easy to defend. I'm not saying that, but they make it easy because their running game is really not a threat. It's not a threat. Even they stopped running their quarterback. They'll do it a couple times here and there, but they don't complement it. There's not, you don't look at the Bills and go, wow, we got to worry about that running game.
They don't really try to improve it either, right? I mean, it's not a focus for them.
You just said it's not a priority. And I just go back to, I use teams like the Ravens because they do have, they establish that right. They're going to be in it. They're going to be in it just because they do that. I'm going to tell you this. If you had said, I'm a team that, well, I'll tell you a team that has evolved and grown and they foundationally started there, the Detroit Lions. 3 years ago, they would run the ball as good as anybody. Just nobody was talking about them. They couldn't complement it with the passing game, but they were in every game. They were hanging in there. Their defense would make a mistake. There'd be something bad in the passing game. But once those things got cleaned up, now they're a legit team. They're a legit playoff team and a potential Super Bowl team. So when you look at the Bills, they just lack that phase. And so it makes it easier to defend the pass. When that is the only phases we have to worry about, it's just easier for defenses to handle. They got some problems on the defensive side too, that they haven't, there's been some injuries there. They're not quite the defense they have been in past years. You mentioned the turnovers. They've had some turnovers in awful times, in bad.
Crucial
turnovers
moments.
are bad anywhere. But, when you're down scoring territory, that's when they really sting. And that's been how do you end those things? You emphasize protecting the ball. There are some things you can clean up. But having played it, having carried the ball a lot in my life, man, you can have two hands on the ball. You can do everything. And sometimes it comes out no matter what you do, So, but to emphasize that can help clean it up. But those other phases, are they going to be added? I mean, it could be, but it's hard to prioritize them and make them better and evolve when you're not prioritizing them already, and it's not a priority. So, and are you going to get in the playoffs and say Josh Allen's going to be our runner again? It's a lot to ask. I think it's a big ask of your quarterback, of your team, and you really do limit the phases that you could possibly have to make you a potential championship.
Who is your MVP right now at the halfway mark of the season, and who would you pick to finish the season as MVP?
Gosh, that's a good one. Since I don't get so caught up in because I look at how players play in so many different ways.
It's an odd year for offense, like it's just.
Yeah, there's not a guy that
it's wide open.
Everybody's had their hiccups. Because obviously Tua was there for a while.
Yeah.
And
it's never
there.
Our wide receivers never won it, right? Like, no one thinks about pass rusher, right, with Myles Garrett because it's a quarterback award.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm for that. I think it's wide open for the first time in a long time.
Which is a good point. And I've always thought that there's listen, if you thought about an impact guy made a difference almost in every single game he's done something, would be TJ Watt. Has literally won games, from a defensive perspective for them. I can think of two right off the bat, and, to your point, it gets, the quarterback is all, okay, Joe Burrow is starting to play extremely well. Okay, if he keeps riding this wave and plays like Joe Burrow can play, and he's consistent like that, he could run away with it, at this point. And if TJ Watt keeps doing the things he's doing, he gets overridden by the quarterback, which is actually it's not a fair process, but they didn't say it's going to be fair, So, but if you said it right now, I'd lean more towards guys like that have made significant differences, won games, and they don't have the opportunities to win games. Quite honestly, okay, the quarterback has the ball in his hands, we'll say 50 to 60% of the time. He's got a legitimate shot. These defenders to make game-changing plays and plays that win games, man, are minute. There may be a handful, say maybe 10 moments where you can do that, and he's done it a couple times already. And if he keeps doing
That's
that,
right. He finds those 10. He finds those 10.
He does. Maximizes them.
Thank you for the time, man. Great visit as always, and
always
we much appreciate the time and the visit, the insight today.
Anytime. And next time we'll have the tie on, all right?
Yeah.
I got the memo.
I'll try to tie it along with you. Yeah.
Let's do it. I'd like that.
Okay. Yeah. I appreciate it, man. Have a good weekend.
Okay, buddy.
Yeah.
You're good, brother.
Yep. Same to you. There's Merill Hodge. Love his insight and his analysis. Coming up, we'll give some in regards to our picks for the weekend. Wrong team favored. I think mine will surprise Davey Hudson. Also, J.J. McCarthy has made a statement. Michigan's responded, and so has J.J. McCarthy, the quarterback. That's next on Hot Mic with Hutton Withrow across the OutKick Network.
Dabo Sweeney ripping his own fans. Dabo Sweeney at Clemson is, I don't know, they tell me that he's the guy that doesn't like the transfer portal because he's made some comments that weren't exactly supportive of it. Dabo Sweeney has done a job at Clemson that very few thought could be done. Clemson is a town about this big. Well, I better do this, not that, because that's like a white power sign idiots say. But it's about that big. The state is South Carolina. The state is not Clemson. But Dabo Sweeney put Clemson in rarefied air. If you, a couple years ago, were going to name me the 3 best college football teams before Georgia's run here, you'd say Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson. That's kind of who it always came down to. It felt like. So Dabo Sweeney is now the victim of something that is good in one way, but it's bad in another. Incredible expectations of your fan base, meaning 10-2 ain't good enough. It just ain't. You can say whatever you want, but it just ain't. We got to be better. What? We're not in the college football playoff? What? We're not winning a national champion? What? We're 4-2? That's only winning 67% of our games? Here's what Dabo had to say. If you don't go undefeated, people say you're losers, that you're terrible. Let me tell you something. This is why football coaches for years and years and years and years fought the college football playoff. We're at a point in time, and I hate that, where people, if you don't go undefeated, you're losers. You're terrible. It's just a terrible mindset. Honestly, maybe we need to lose a few games and lighten up the bandwagon. Sometimes the bandwagon get a little full. That's the one good thing about going through a little bit of so-called adversity, is that you really find out who's with you and who's not. That's all crap. Let me explain to you Dabo Sweeney's day, can I? Dabo Sweeney probably wakes up around 5:30. Dabo Sweeney smokes shit, shower, shave, shampoo, goes to the office. Probably has a meeting at 7. Dabo Sweeney then is probably in different meetings with players or recruits, or maybe the administration, and maybe watching film, whatever. Then he has practice. Then after practice, he's doing the same thing. Then in the evening, he's making phone calls. Probably goes home around 10. At no point in time in his day, his week, his month, his year, is he finding out who's with us and who's not with us. It's not like there's a list. Now, maybe you find out what media member wants to rip you, but on a daily basis, a monthly basis, you're not finding out any of this crap. It's very simple. Coaches, if you want to know who's with you, understand that when you lose, nobody's really with you. If you want to know who's really with you, win. And then everybody's really with you. It's literally that simple. As my father used to say to me, Dan, we're with you, win or tie, and we ain't so sure about the tie. So shut up with that stuff, win some football games, and don't sweat it. Seriously, do yourself a favor. Work hard, grab yourself a glass of wine, go sit in your chair, and read a book instead of being on social media or worrying about who is with you and who is not with you.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mic with Hunt and Withrow. Wrapping up what's been a fast week. Getting into the college football and NFL weekend. Jim Harbaugh suspended for the rest of the regular season at Michigan. News coming down today. About, 2 hours ago, Davey? In regards to what the Big Ten and Commissioner Tony Petitti handed down. As soon as the wheels touch down, we see the statement released by Michigan. And I think it's perfectly stated that, you want to talk about competitive advantage. Like, this is the definition of it, and the commissioner laid out this competitive advantage at the time that he did, which he waited until they were on their way to Pennsylvania to do this. And then also did it, and it's a competitive advantage for Penn State. Now, less than 24 hours before kickoff, they learned that at Michigan, their head coach isn't going to be allowed in the venue. We'll see what happens legally with this. J.J. McCarthy just tweets out one word, bet, at his response. Davey, do you think he's on the sideline tomorrow?
J.J. McCarthy?
No,
I'm just kidding. Jim Harbaugh, no.
I don't either.
I think they'll try to get that injunction, and they might come close, but I think if they're smart, they just sit this one out. We'll see what happens. I do have a theory, real quick, on the J.J. McCarthy thing. I do think that's funny. Obviously, I know what he's getting at. It's slang for, all right, you're doubting us. We'll we'll show you, which I love it when teams that are like the top teams in the country always find ways to think everyone's
This is a good
against
example
them.
of one, this is legit.
This is one where the entire country is against you because your team obviously cheated. I just kind of made the comment, though. It's like, well, now we're adding gambling on top of all the other programs going on at Michigan. That's not good signs for the program, and I say that in jest. But I do have a theory, and I wanted to get your take on this, Hut. So we discussed earlier about the timing of this situation where news came down once Michigan's already in the air. Do you think the television networks had anything to do with when we're going to, or at least getting in the ear of Tony Petitti and saying, hey, what if we wait just a little bit? And I say that because tomorrow, if you get up at noon Eastern, or sorry, before noon Eastern, but you're on Fox, you're watching Big Noon Kickoff.
Yeah.
And that pregame show, they're in Happy Valley. Michigan versus Penn State is where they're at. That is going to be a raucous crowd. And that's one of those things to where we know what that entire conversation is going to be about for a majority of the show.
Yeah, but it would be anyway, even if he's coaching, right? Or even if the suspension was announced prior to them taking off.
It would, but it's not like this story's been to where people have been able to talk about it leading up to that.
I have
mean,
a theory on the timing.
News dump. Okay.
Now, let me preface this by saying, I think it's because it's a statement without making a statement. You're going to get on the flight, whatever. You got your attorney, Tom Morris, saying one way or the other, he's going to be a part of the itinerary as we head to take on Penn State. What if it's because they knew that he would board the plane anyway, and optics, they wanted to suspend him while he's en route instead of him just, middle finger in the air.
Yeah,
as he boards the plane.
That's a good thought.
Because it's a massive story, but they're already tracking the flight. They're showing him board the bus, and we've got multiple reporters on site at the runway when they land. I'm just thinking, like, if you're looking for optics, would you wait to do it knowing that he's going to board anyway? And again, I think he's going to try to show up tomorrow because this whole thing has been a denial.
But I'm with you. I mean, that makes sense to where if you're the Big Ten and you wait and you say, because if the idea is, like, let's say they made the announcement an hour before they're supposed to get on the bus anyway, and then Harbaugh shows up, gets on the bus, gets on the plane.
Gets off the plane.
He just looks like, he doesn't care what anyone has to say. He's going to defy them.
By the way, he can do that. He just can't be at the venue on game day. So he gets to coach during practice. He can be at the team hotel on road trips. He just can't be at the stadium. So maybe they didn't care about that. But it was carefully worded to mention venue.
I'm with you. That's a good point to bring up. It at least makes the Big Ten save a little bit of face at the moment to where it doesn't look like they have someone in complete opposition based off actions after a ruling has been handed down by them.
Agree or disagree with the actual ruling here with the suspension. I actually give Tony Petitti and the conference credit here simply because they've done something that, it's gutsy no matter what they end up doing. The easy way out is to just not do anything.
Yeah.
And just let the NCAA figure it out. But instead, the NCAA fed information about their investigation to the Big Ten and Tony Petitti to help them out.
I can't think of an example.
The one thing, real quick, David, that we know that they confirmed was that there was no connection between Ryan Day's family and the private investigation firm. That came from the NCAA to the Big Ten. That's an interesting connection that as we wait on the NCAA for who knows how long, they were at least trying to pick up the pace too because they knew Petitti would do it.
Can you recall a time where a head coach has been suspended twice in the season for different violations?
Nope. And one of them was, he's pissed about both of them. One of them, though, was by his university. And the other is by the commissioner, not suspended twice, but neither of them are due to the NCAA.
So in theory, he's suspended for half the season. 12 games, 3 the first 3, and then the last 3.
So I know a lot's going to be made of, if they win on game day without Jim Harbaugh, what does that mean for Michigan? If they win on game day without Jim Harbaugh, what does that mean for James Franklin and Ryan Day? That's the next saga here. Because you want the game day justice to play out on the field. And if they don't do that, given the circumstances, what's the reaction to those coaches?
It's definitely going to be a different feel without your head coach there. No one's going to be able to argue that. But I still don't view it, as big of a situation.
Well, he's coaching during the week.
Yes.
The game plan is the game plan.
That's where
maybe
it would
he
really
hangs
hurt
with
him.
Connor Stallions on game day. That's the other thing he can do.
He's going down with the ship. I'm curious to see when he eventually turns. I don't know if he falls on hard times, but the evidence is just too damning for him to be able to ever coach again unless some other.
I don't think it is, because he could just double down and say, prove I knew about it, which they haven't been able to do. It was just
I'm saying
a failure
Stallions.
Stallions, sorry.
Yeah.
Stallions is gone. I thought you meant Harbaugh.
No, he's getting up there in age to the point. I'm curious how much longer he wants to go. But he still seems to be in good shape. And
his father, Jack, went for a long time. So as long as he wants to. And he could waltz back into the NFL.
But I am kind of curious how the NFL views this punishment. Because they've said it might not just necessarily be a cakewalk where he's just able to come right back into the league, no problems at all based off that Pelissero and Rappaport
But I think
report.
it's more about your ban based on more details that came out that were just hypothetical for the NFL. A 3-game suspension is not, in the regular season where he's coaching during the week, and through the Big Ten, not the NCAA. So right now I think there's no safe harbor if things got crazy with the details. Right now, he could go coach for Las Vegas, and no one would bat an eye. That's my perception of it. Wrong team favored. Last week, I was all in on Jacksonville State at South Carolina. I thought I had another win.
You're close.
I was. 28-28, fourth quarter. And South Carolina kicks a field goal. 31-28. Jacksonville State's driving. 2-minute warning, right above the two-minute mark, I should say. Timeout, Shane Beamer, trying to save clock because he knows Jacksonville State's about to score. They come out of that timeout, and Jacksonville State throws a pick six. Ball game. And I just sent a text to Chad and Davey that said, Gamecocks.
What was it? Turn on your TV now?
Turn on the TV now. The Gamecocks are about to win this. And then there's the pick six. The Gamecocks did win this, by the way. Chad went with Colorado over Oregon State. That did not hit. And Davey, gaining up the points here, man.
I told you, man, it was going to be a boring game. You didn't want to watch it, but NC State managed to take a 20-6 victory. It's not one of those where they're clasping at the jaws of life for Miami holding on there. There was not much of a game at all. But, yeah, trying to come back, Hud. I did do the numbers, and the current look at where we stand. You are 7-3 on the year, which is incredible. Chad, I think his goes without saying. We've played 10 games, and he's got 0 points up there, so you can do the math on that one. And I'm currently sitting at 4-6.
You're making a nice little run, though. And I'm loading up, by the way, and going with some points. I thought about playing it safe. I thought about Missouri, just playing it safe for a point. Instead, I'm going big, 14.5. That's the line as Georgia Tech visits Clemson. Georgia Tech has been putting up points, believe it or not. They've scored 91 points over the last 2 weeks. One of those games was against UNC. The other one was against Virginia. So I get it. One team that is, at least average, a little bit above average with a very solid quarterback. The other one, awful in Virginia. But I also this is more about my faith in Clemson. Great performance last week, Davey, against Notre Dame.
Very much.
But this is the same team that lost back-to-back games earlier this season. And to, NC State and Miami.
Miami, yeah, both the teams that I picked had in my matchup last week.
Back-to-back weeks. That version of Clemson isn't gone. And the real bet is, can Georgia Tech just hold Clemson to 27 or less? Because, again, looking at the numbers and how they've played recently, they have been consistent offensively. They have scored at least 20 points in every game. And you look at what Clemson's done, and it's very up and down. And I just don't think that they ride momentum because they haven't been able to all season. I'm taking the upset. Georgia Tech beats Clemson. And it was only 1 week of the stress level and the pressure and the critics talking about Dabo and the Tigers because it comes back next week.
No, I'm with you. I think that's a good pick. Dabo, to my knowledge, didn't plan a call this weekend for him to go on a rant about, so they're not going to have that to use as motivation. So you've actually found yourself in a good spot, and then winning against Notre Dame last week puts that line in a much better spot for you too, where you could get. I would say had Clemson lost last week, you might be looking at like a 9.5, 10-point line here. So you get 4.5 on that.
Chad is taking Colorado to win against Arizona. That would give him 10.5 points. He's buying the Buffs in week 11. Where are you going this week?
I don't feel confident in Chad's, but I am going to be taking.
Take the over in that game, by the way, Chad's game.
Yeah, I'm going to be taking Utah over Washington. Now, I know that Michael Penix and this Huskies team has been the best team in the Pac-12 so far this year, but they are going against the best defense that they will face, and they have faced and will face for the entire season. That Utah Utes defense is something that Kyle Whittingham has made sure this is how we're going to win games. And I know they've been a big team for you.
It travels.
This year, Hut, as far as picking the Utes to get the upset. I think we finally see Washington get knocked off. And it's the worst thing for the Pac-12 because they need Washington to win out. But I just think whenever I look at this conference, you're going to continue to see teams eat up on one another. I think USC might actually even come out and give Oregon a hell of a game. And that one's like, I think, a 15-point
for
line.
the Pac-12 in their final year.
But, I mean, everything that Caleb Williams – we're going to learn a lot about Caleb Williams this weekend.
Moneymaker lock for me. Bucks, Titans, take the over 38.5. Believe it or not. Both quarterbacks should be able to throw the ball against these defenses, and the Titans haven't been able to stop the run. So I think Rachaad White even adds to the point total here. I think we see points. And Will Levis and Baker Mayfield play well, and I think the Bucks win the game.
Under in Jets Raiders, under 38.
Take the under in Iowa as well. Back at it on Monday. Join us at 3 o'clock for Hot Mike with Hutton Withrow across the OutKick Network.